My name is Brooke. So basically the background is that my parents were alcoholics, addicts. I grew up in that. They divorced. My mom remarried. So did my dad. It's interesting because my dad and my stepmom got together. My mom and my stepdad got together. But somewhere along the way before, my stepdad and my stepmom were together.
One big happy family.
Weird.
Got it.
And in NA, it's like very small.
Small group. Okay.
Yeah, like small.
So that's
world.
probably how they all met,
Yes,
you're thinking?
Yes,
okay.
yes. And they all like knew each other. My dad helped my stepdad get clean. And then when my mom and him were still together, and then my stepdad became my stepdad later on. Weird, whatever.
Got
it. So I grew up in a very, I guess, traumatizing, tumultuous childhood. My dad relapsed when I was like 6 or 7. And so it was my mom and my stepdad together with me and my older sister, older brother. And then my mom and my stepdad had 2 more boys who are like 10 years younger than me, 10 and 12 years younger than me. And it was a lot of like my dad being absent from our lives, although he was like the best person in the world, just sadly had a disease and was sick. And my mom was clean at this point, clean and sober. And so was my stepdad. And it was kind of like abusive. My stepdad, my mom, they had a toxic relationship. They were, always fighting with each other. And then like we were, yelled at, and, I think abuse would be the term here. I won't go into that. So I'm just setting the scene for how
you grew up.
I grew up. And I feel like I keep looking down.
Doesn't matter.
Okay, cool.
You're doing good.
Okay.
Are you feeling a little better?
Yeah, I'm still nervous, and I feel like I'm going to cry, but like
That's
there's
okay.
really nothing to cry about.
That's a lot of people say that they didn't think that they would cry, and then they do.
Well, I'm a crier, so
yeah,
it's no
but you're
surprise.
also going in order.
Yeah.
Like, it's a lot.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't want this whole thing to just be me.
No, you're
crying.
okay. That's very normal.
Okay. I mean, I am a crier. I knew that this would happen, so I'm
just
not
don't make
surprised.
me cry.
Yeah, right? I'll do my best. So, okay, moving forward, trauma, insanity. My stepdad ends up leaving kind of NA, and he's, smoking weed and drinking alcohol every night in our garage and like being a psycho. And my mom is still in NA at this point. And so is my entire family. So like my mom's sister and her husband, who I'm very close with, and cousins and uncles and like everybody. My grandfather had actually died from mixing drugs and alcohol years ago. And so, so fast forward, I'm 14. My dad dies from an overdose. And as one can imagine, that like, messes with you at any age, but at 14. And I was like almost like the last day of 8th grade when this happened. And so, we go through the summer. It's a horrible experience. And I think I just felt so alone because by this point, my older brother and older sister were like 17 and 18, and they were on their way out. And we shared our dad. My like younger brothers, we did not. And so, and also like my mom and my stepdad, this is like, so crazy and toxic in their relationship or marriage. And I go into high school. I'm really struggling. I'm angry, and I'm like flipping desks and like cussing teachers out. I was just like a very aggressive individual. And I turned 16, and I'm having so much trouble that the school is like in contact with my mom, like, we need to do something.
Yeah.
And so they decide to put me in an emotional support class, which is considered special education. There's learning support, and then there's emotional support. And so I was placed into an emotional support class.
So question, the people that teach those classes, are they considered like school counselors? Or?
They are school teachers.
Okay.
But they are special education. Mm-hmm. So like you can do like elementary education or special education as your like degree or whatever.
Okay.
So the person that I'm going to be talking about, her name is Tammy. She was my special education teacher. But I'm sure they have some like extra training or certifications or whatever they have to get for the emotional side of things. I'm sure on the learning support side of things, it might be different too, or maybe they're all taught the same thing. Who the hell knows? But it was an emotional support special education class. So I was in a special education class, but it was also with kids who needed learning support.
Okay.
Am I close enough to
Yes.
Okay.
You're fine. And this was something that the school suggested for you, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, it's like called an IEP, which is an individualized education plan. I think it's like a very common term when kids, need to go. I think even like kids in like gifted classes probably have something similar to this. And it's like a plan that like the teacher, so like you have a separate emotional support teacher in conjunction with all of your other like subjects, English and all that stuff. And they talk. So like your emotional support teacher talks to whatever. So I'm placed in this class halfway through the year in, 10th grade or 11th grade. I think 11th. And where was I going with that? Okay. In 11th grade, I was placed into this class halfway through the year. So I was pulled from like a Spanish class, which I was failing. And they're like, you need to go in. And I'm like, special education? Like, are you kidding me? No, like I'm not doing that. But I can't do anything because I'm 16 and this is what they're saying. They're like, she's having so much trouble. She's like not doing her work. She doesn't want to show up to class. I was like skipping class and going and smoking cigarettes in the bathroom. And this is like 2007 and 8. This isn't like 1980. Like so like you can get caught for that shit. But I'm like doing that. I'm just like cussing teachers out. I'm just like angry because my dad died and there's really no one to like walk me through this experience.
Right. And you and your mom didn't really talk much about it, I'm assuming?
It's like we did, but like, I feel like we're so much more emotionally aware these days because we have the resources at our fingertips. Like we have the internet, which our parents didn't really have that. So my mom wasn't super emotionally available or completely in tune. I mean, she was loving and, she was so terribly sorry. And, her and my dad had a decent friendship even after they divorced. And
it just wasn't the support that was like needed.
Yeah. It was like I needed so much more.
And I think I've said this before on this show to people. I don't think that, and maybe now it's a little bit different and the more people speak out about this, future parents will understand better. But I don't think that our parents, because I lost my dad at a young age too.
Oh, gosh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I don't think our parents really knew that the best thing would maybe be therapy for like a kid. And that's for multiple different reasons, but I don't, and there's a chance too that therapy wouldn't even have helped because it takes finding the right therapist and trial and error and everything, along the lines of that. But I don't think parents always understand that I think when something traumatic like that happens, kids need more support than just like a parent checking in because they're not always going to open up the way that they could to
and I absolutely was not going to.
Right, you weren't in that place.
Well, and also I'm like living with my mom and my stepdad,
right, and
like
they were having issues.
Psycho,
it just wasn't the right.
It wasn't the environment wasn't suitable for my grief. And there was something you said, the therapy part. So I was put in this like. It's called, it was called Olivia's House, and it's like a place that's like a nonprofit that you can go for like, grieving kids or teenagers, and you go like once a week, and it felt so icky to me. Yeah. That I'm like in this room with all of these other kids that are like, they just lost like siblings, and I'm like, this is not what I need. Right. But I was always put on like medications for like depression and anxiety, but like they put me in like a very sterile feeling room with this like old ass therapist who's like a 65-year-old guy who's like, how does this make you feel? I'm like, my dad's dead. How do you think it makes me feel? So it just wasn't what I needed. And so they're like, oh yeah, she's struggling. Let's put her in this classroom. And so I go in this classroom, and I remember the first day walking in, the teacher, Tammy, which I obviously didn't call her that, but I'm not going to say her last name, was in there. And I remember feeling so resistant and just like not wanting to go in. And also I had heard that this teacher was like kind of a bitch, or like, we can cuss on here, right? Yes. Okay. Kind of not cool. So I already had that in my head going in, and I was actually met with something completely different. So when I walked in, I remember her being very welcoming, you know, and she was younger for a teacher. I feel like she's 12 years older than me. Okay. So I was 16 and she would have been like 28, I think, right? 26, 28. Yes, 28. And she was cool. So she was trying to be real cool with me. And like looking back, I can see where this all was set up. And I do want to say this. I don't think that this person had the intent of grooming me or doing anything consciously malicious. I think she was a very troubled person herself. And we have talked about that to a great length. Anyways, so it's very welcoming. I end up like being like, this teacher is fucking cool. Like, I love her. Mm-hmm. And I was and I think, you know, people who like lose their dads young, people will say like they have daddy issues. But I also like didn't have a very emotionally available mom either. My mom is a great person and I love her. And she did the best she could with the hand she was dealt, but I needed more. But I lacked both pretty much. So I also think I had some mommy issues.
Well, also too, when something traumatic happens, we cling, and you were in a place of acting out and anger and all this stuff. You were placed in these other groups and tried different things that just weren't working. So I think when the first available person that you finally felt like you had a connection with, or that was cool and that you felt comfortable with, you're going to cling to that and like hold on to it. Yeah. That's like, I feel like that is what anyone would do.
That's exactly what I did. And I think she started to realize this. So it's like, how do I go about telling how this ends up where it is? Because there's just so much. But it's almost like you also can't remember. Mm-hmm. Like back then, I can tell you like the main points, but I can't remember all the details. But I'm in her class and it starts out like, you know, I'm very angry in all my other classes and she's like talking to my teachers and she's like, you know, helping me and just being really cool. Like, as one does when they're trying to like be cool with a teenager. I don't know. Weird. I could never hang out with a teenager as like a 20. Can you imagine being 28 and like chilling with like a 16 or 17-year-old? I feel like that's what started to happen in the classroom. So it's like, I get in there, she's making me feel so comfortable. She's like giving me her story of when she was younger and we really relate and we really click. I'm like the troubled teenager. She gets it.
Now, when you're in her classroom, is it just you and her? Or
no,
is it
sorry.
Other
so
kids?
It's me and like a bunch of other kids, like ranging from 9th grade to 12th grade. And I would say in total at one time, there was between like 8 and 12 kids, maybe like 6.
And was there ever like one-on-one things? Okay.
Yes. So it just like would depend. So like I think she became my homeroom once I moved. So they like your emotional support class becomes your homeroom when you're assigned to it and you lose like the original homeroom you had. So she became my homeroom. So she was where I went first thing in the morning, her classroom. And then I just got like this, like talking about, I'm like, what if she sees this? Which has already been something that I've been thinking about. Sorry, I don't know why I got like scared for a second. Anyways, so yeah, it becomes your homeroom and there's kids from like, you know, all walks of life, learning support, emotional support. They're coming from whatever classes. And it's almost like, you know how you're assigned a homeroom or what's study hall? Yeah. Like sometimes I think it would replace your study hall. And it was like, you would go in and essentially she would help you like get your work done. If you had like an emotional outburst in the classroom, they would like send you to her before they would send you to like a school counselor or like the principal's office. And I could have been found a lot of times before going into her class in the principal's office. That's usually where I ended up. So, and I would have a lot of emotional outbursts. And I started realizing that I was like kind of having more because I wanted to go to her class. Like I wanted to be around her. I instantly like loved her. Like I was like, okay, this is a person, because I felt seen and I felt like someone was giving me some attention. And, yeah, so I found myself like almost having even more outbursts. And also it was like kind of processing things with her about what was going on. So they were at the forefront of my mind and then like really struggling. And I knew if I like flipped out, they would be like, you can leave class. And I would go chill in her class. And it got to this point where it was like, I remember having to do a test in English and the teacher like sealed the envelope because I was like such a bad kid. Like, I don't know what she thought. I was going to just cheat at my locker on the way to, which, hey, you know what? I don't blame her for that.
Right.
Maybe I was. But to like walk down to Tammy's class, which was a literal 30-second walk, she like really sealed this test and I had to go take it in Tammy's class. And I remember handing it to Tammy and it started with her like, this is like so inappropriate, but like talking about other teachers like with me where she's like, what the hell? She like sealed this like with like, you know, a blood seal or whatever, because like almost like trying to get with me like how I felt about it, like really trying to drop down to like a teenager's level and be like, this dumb teacher, which like the teacher did what she was supposed to. And Tammy shouldn't have been talking about this other teacher. Like it was just weird. So it was stuff like that. And then it progressed to, she was texting me, like she would set up a binder on her desk and would be like texting me like funny things like in her classroom. Like, the idea of texting a teacher at all, but let alone in the school, like was just like so strange. But at the time I was like, I'm cool. Like she's older. Like to me, she's cool. Like we're friends.
Well, I don't think we're really, and it's not, this isn't an excuse, but if you look back at when you're that age, that is it does seem cool. I don't really think there's any red flags. We're not really at an age to understand that that's not normal or okay.
Right.
And I'm like, older,
well, and she's a teacher, right? So she's the guide, right? Like she's supposed to be the person that's setting the standard of what is acceptable and appropriate
and
in
at the
this
same
relationship.
time, it's like you might also have this mindset of it. Oh, it wasn't just she's not just a normal teacher. Like she's there to help me beyond what a normal teacher can. So maybe it's not weird.
Yes. But then I started to realize, like, I was like, I don't think anyone else is like talking to her in this way. She's not texting anyone else. I just felt there was like a difference. I felt like we were close and we were getting close. And then this is really random, but we went to, so I've always struggled with my weight, like being overweight. And so did she. And, but at that point, neither of us were really like that overweight. So this is just weird. But we went to an Overeaters Anonymous meeting. She's the one who suggested it. By the way, I'm still her student. And she is like leaving the school with me after school and taking me.
And you were 16, right?
Yeah, to this place. And it's like just me and her in this meeting. Looking back, it is very funny. We're on this couch and there's the leader of like, it's called OA. It's like NA, Narcotics Anonymous, but it's for overeating, whatever. And it was bizarre. And like, I could not look at her. She could not look at me because we would have laughed. But I'm like looking back, like, were you also a teenager at this time? Because you were supposed to be the adult. And we left and she's like making fun of the lady. And I remember feeling like, okay, it was funny while we were in it. Like, I was like, what are we doing here? This is a bizarre thing that we're doing. And some of it was so extreme that you want to laugh. But I felt weird about leaving there and she's like laughing at this lady and like making fun of her. It felt cruel to me. And I was just like, okay, but I'm 16 and this is a cool older person. So I'm like, you know, joining in, whatever. So there was that. And I remember going back to school a couple days later and I was in like social studies. And I remember my teacher in there, I had the pamphlet for OA in my binder and I like opened it and she must have seen it. And she was like, what's that? And I was like, oh, I went to an OA meeting with Tammy. That's not what I called her back then. And I remember the teacher was kind of like, you did? And I was like, yeah. And then my heart sunk because I was like, I feel like I said something I wasn't supposed to. Well, this teacher went back and said something to Tammy. And Tammy says to me, you can't be telling people that we're like, that we went to that. First of all, like, I don't want people to know that I went to something like that. And also like, it's not like she knew, like, I'm not really supposed to be hanging out with you. This is kind of weird. And the other teacher also thinks it's weird. So like, don't tell people. So then I was like, oh, okay, so this has to be like a secret. And I was like, you know, I had to grow up, I think, a little bit quicker just because of like my dad dying, all the things that I went through. So I was aware of these things. Like I knew that this was inappropriate, but I just didn't care because I'm like 16. Someone's paying me attention. I think she's cool. She apparently thinks I'm cool. And that's that. So I'm just going to like keep talking and these things are going to pop into my head, like random stories. And totally I'm going to just bounce off of those. So she's like texting me behind the binder. I remember having cigarettes in my purse and like my purse was on my desk. And I remember her being like, if those cigarettes are in there tomorrow, like I will report you or whatever. And it's like, but shouldn't you have reported me then? Like your job was to like probably get me to quit smoking at that point. So maybe like go tell somebody or call my mom or something, but she didn't do that. So I'm like, oh, she's really cool. She's like, I knew, and I felt it. Like I knew she saw my cigarettes and like had to like say something, but really was just trying to be cool with me. So she was like, I'm not going to like tell on you or whatever. And I thought that was so cool. I'm like, I can smoke cigarettes and she's not going to tell me I can do anything. She also gave me the code. So the way my high school worked was the front of the school was where like the bus drop-offs came and where you like left. But really the main entrance was the back. So if you drove to school when you got your license or if you were a teacher, you would come in and like if your parents came to pick you up or if there was any event, like you went in through the back of the school. But the front of the school had a 4-digit code to get in. She gave me that code. Like no one's supposed to have the code except for staff. Yeah. So like I remember just like leaving, driving down the road. I went and got my eyebrows done one day and smoked a couple cigarettes with a friend. And I was like, I have the code. We can just like go back. No one knew. No one knew I was like leaving school and like coming back. By the way, she was also the teacher. So we had kids that would like, you know, like get expelled or kicked out of school. And they would come to I don't remember what it was called, the after school program. They were still allowed to come to school, but not during normal school hours. And she was the teacher who ran that in like the basement of the school. And I remember that's where I had initially heard rumors of her. Like everyone was like, this teacher's a bitch. Like she's not cool, whatever. So I'm thinking this teacher's going to be like hardcore strict. And with me, and I saw a difference in the way she treated me and with other people. And she started to do this thing where, I would get angry about something. She would almost like poke and prod and like either get me angry or like say things to hurt my feelings. And then when I would cry, like I remember putting my head on my desk and cry, she would be like, come here. And like, then she would like hug me and be like, I'm really sorry for yelling at you. So it was like this weird thing where it started to be like she was like getting me to that point only to console me.
Right.
She gave me like an incentive to quit smoking and was like, if you quit smoking, I'll like reward you. Like you get to do something of like your choice. And I chose snow tubing. This like feels so cringy and embarrassing to me, by the way, that I'm like taking this person's bait and being like, that sounds great. And it's also, I feel like weird that she's a woman. You generally don't hear, I feel like, of a woman doing this. It's usually like a dude. Mm-hmm. So I think that feels like weird to me. And so she takes me snow tubing, and it's just me and her.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Did your mom know about your relationship with her?
Yeah. And my mom was just like,
cool.
This is great.
Yeah.
Like, cool. Also, during this time, I start babysitting Tammy and her husband, who I'll say his name now is Scott. I start babysitting their kids, who are 4 and 2. No. At that point, they were like, their youngest was like 10 months and their oldest was like almost 2, I think. And I also worked at Chick-fil-A, and I remember her bringing their girls to like on a night shift when I was working, like to get a kid's meal and like play in the play place. And on my break, I like hung out with her and the kids. But yeah, I started babysitting the kids, and it turns into I'm now spending the night at their house, and she's taking me to school in the morning. And I just remember being like, I know I can't talk about this, right? But I was like loving it. Like I'm asleep on the couch in her basement, and I'm like, this is cool. Okay, so that was like through 11th grade, and then I get into being a senior, and really struggled with my relationship with my mom, and I end up moving out of my mom's house into my aunt's house, her sister's house, who lives in the same school district. So I grew up with my cousins who are like close to us, like our brothers, and I went and lived with them for a while. And my aunt lived 8 minutes from Tammy's house, where my mom's house was like probably 25 minutes. And so I move in with my aunt, and I say, I'm going to go over to Tammy's. Initially, it was like, I'm going to babysit, whatever. And then it turned into like, I'm going to go hang out over there for a while. And I remember distinctly leaving my aunt's house one day where I lived, and I'm in leggings and like a shirt or whatever. And my aunt says, oh no, you're going back upstairs to change. You're not walking around someone's house in front of her husband, a grown man, looking like that. And I remember being like, I'm literally 17. He's 30 at that point, 29, whatever. Like I was like, you're being dramatic. Well, my gosh, if that wasn't like a vision into the future. But I just remember being like, he's not going to be like looking at me, but she made me change. So I had to change out of leggings. And I remember going over there, like I would babysit, but I would also go over there and like, we would kick it on the couch and watch a show, and like her and I would both fall asleep on the couch, which I thought was weird. And I started to notice that like I felt very obsessed with her. Like I think just like her attention, but I was just like, I want to hang out with this person as much as I can, or like text her as much as I can, or find any reason to like be around her. And she seemed to like eat that right up.
And did she ever have any like weird conversations with you that you can remember? Like, did she ever ask you weird questions or?
Yeah, so she would tell me things about like other teachers. Like she told me a story about, and he was like the football coach. I don't know what they were doing. They were going, you know, like there's like a store closet with extra school supplies. I don't know why they were both in there, or if this story is even real, because I caught her many times like exaggerating or maybe lying about different things. But she said, and I'm like, who the hell would say this to somebody? But apparently he told her, I don't know, maybe if she was single, if she wasn't married, I don't know how he said this, that he would slap his balls to her. I know.
So random.
I can think of a million better ways to like maybe try and flirt or like say something sexual, but like that wouldn't be. I know.
Okay.
But I remember her telling me this and like laughing, but also being like, is she being honest? Like, did this actually happen? Also, I know this teacher and this coach.
I was going to say, then it puts you in a weird situation, because then you're like,
I know this person. Well, and I'm also like, I can't imagine him saying something like this. And also, okay, if he said that, why didn't you report him? Because it's another staff member it's like sexual harassment if you want to like get real about it. But also, why are you telling me? I'm your student. I'm 16, 17, however old I was. It was just weird. So there were things like that she would tell me. I remember her talking to me about sex. And in the context of like, I hadn't had sex yet, and I hadn't even had a boyfriend yet. And it was like, then I met this guy, and I remember going to her like, not genuinely needing advice or help, but like just so I had a reason to talk to her. But I was like saying like, well, I think I might want to with this guy or whatever. And he was like a bad boy, and like honestly probably on drugs, and not probably, he was. And I just remember her like yelling at me, but then telling me like kind of how to do it, or like, and it's vague. I can't really remember all of this, but just weird stuff that she shouldn't have been talking to me about. Nothing too crazy. I mean, looking back now, I'm like, some of the shit was wild, but like nothing that's so bad where it's like, okay, this is dangerous, or like, this is very obvious what's going on here, you know, like obvious grooming or anything. It was just, I'm thinking this person's cool. She's older. She's my emotional support teacher, but also we're becoming friends. And like, we're just talking, right? Like we're cool. So yeah, I'm babysitting. I'm spending the night at her house. And so, like I said, I really struggled in school. I was like, I would skip school or I would be late constantly. And my senior year, I got perfect attendance and perfect punctuality, meaning I was on time and I was in school every single day, even on senior skip day, because I wanted to be around her. I wanted to and I wanted her to be proud of me. Like I was like, oh my gosh. Well, I end up getting nominated for Turnaround Student Achievement Award of 2009. So it's like out of the entire district of like 5 or 6 schools, I think it was out of like, I don't know, 5,000 kids or something, I'm chosen for this award, which now I'm just like, what a weird award. But it's like I went from being bad to like being good. And so Tammy, and my principal, who was also like so supportive and loving and had absolutely no clue this was happening with Tammy, because they were very like, they worked closely together to talk about like my case or whatever the hell it was, they had to write an article for the newspaper. So I was like literally in the newspaper. I almost said what the newspaper was, but we're not going to do that. And it's a picture of me and Tammy and my principal holding my plaque for this award. And we had to go to this award ceremony. So I get this award. We have this banquet. I'm like so proud of myself that I like turned around. But I was like, I only did this because I like wanted to hang out with her. I didn't really...
Like not to better yourself.
I didn't really turn my life around. And also, I feel like I'm making this out to seem like I was this horrible kid. Like, I was just like angry. I wasn't harming anyone else and I wasn't, so out of control. And I was well liked to an extent. But so I get this award and the newspaper comes out and it's a picture of us in the newspaper. And my quote that they used was like basically me giving Tammy all the credit. Like, without her, I like wouldn't be here, which is really how I felt. And I felt so good about that. And I just felt like so cool and so loved. And she's like, can't be touched at this point. I think she's like so proud of herself. Also, there were certain things too, like I remember her helping me with my work in class. This would have been when I was 16. And we had to read that stupid story in British literature called Beowulf. Mm-hmm. I don't even remember what that shit was about. I did not want to read it. And I remember just like kind of laying on the desk and she was like, you have to pay attention. You have to pay attention. She was starting to get like really irritated with me. If she didn't hit me over the head with this book, like flop, like right over my head. And I just remember being like, and she's like, you need to fucking pay attention. And it was just me and her in the classroom. So she wouldn't have acted like that if there were other kids in the classroom. But it was different stuff like that where I'm like, okay. But like, I loved her and I'm like, she's just, she was frustrated with me. And like, I understand at certain points the frustration that teachers had with me because I was hard-headed. You couldn't tell me what to do. And some of these things I did almost on purpose because I wanted more attention from her. So I would like probably make these assignments harder than they were. And then it got to the point where in 12th grade, I was terrible at math. She was like doing my math work like for me, like giving me the answers. Like I would be taking a test in her room and she's giving me the answers, or she's like just telling me like for my homework, like what it is, because she wanted me to graduate. And at this point I was like really close to like not graduating. I think the beginning of 12th grade. And if I just felt like she was giving me like the answers and I'm like thinking this is cool. Like she knows I'm not good at math. And it's funny because I guess I don't know if it's funny, but fast forward, I graduated college last year, but a few years ago, she was like doing my math course for me because I was so terrible at it. Not like the whole thing, but she did a few of my like assignments or whatever. So I think that's weird. Trying to think if like anything else happened in high school. I'm sure a lot of things happened.
Yeah.
But I graduate and I remember being so excited on graduation. And she was trying to find me and I was trying to find her after graduation, like running all around. I just like couldn't find her. And she was very eager to go out with her coworkers. Was planning to go to like community college. I did not want to go to college. I didn't care about school at all. Still don't. And okay, so I graduate. About a month after graduation, I'm like, did my mom start drinking at this time or was it later? I think my mom had started drinking, but I didn't know that that's what it was. But we were fighting so much.
And you were still living at your aunt's?
I was actually, somewhere along the way, senior year, I moved back from my aunt's back into my mom's house. I was only at my aunt's maybe like 6 months. And then I moved back, to my mom's little apartment with her and my 2 little brothers. And I think she had started drinking and you know, sometimes teenage girls and their moms have these like crazy relationships where they argue a lot. We definitely had that, like a lot. And so I'm back at my mom's. I graduated high school. I'm like working at Texas Roadhouse as a hostess near Tammy and Scott's house. And I'm like going over there frequently to like hang out. They have a pool. So I'm like hanging out. I'm like babysitting their kids a lot more. And I'm like over there all the time. And I'm talking to her all the time. And she told me, and I never asked this and I never mentioned this. This was just out of the blue. She says to me, Scott and I were talking and he said, which I'm like, that's weird. If you ever needed a place to live, you're always welcome to come live at our house. And I'm like, well, yeah, I need a place to live, you know, even though I'm at my mom's. It's not great. It's a very small apartment and,
You're not getting along.
No, we're not getting along. And I have 2 little brothers who are, you know, still in elementary school, I think. Yeah. And just struggling in that relationship. And I'm like, okay, I want to go live with them. So I tell Tammy, yes. Like my mom and I had gotten in this big fight shortly after Tammy had told me that. And I was like, okay, that's what I want to do. I'm out. And I'm like, yes, like there's nothing more I could want than like moving into her house. My mom goes to, well, I can just say it. Well, Ocean City. I guess people can find out where I live. You can cut that out or not, whatever. My mom goes to Ocean City for a few days, I think with my grandmother, and takes my brothers. And Tammy had said to me, I think it would be good to do it when your mom's not there and like without her knowing. By the way, I had just turned 18. So I do turn 18 and become an adult at this point. But like, let's be real. At 18, do you just magically turn into an adult? Not really. But I like think I am. So they come over. We like disassemble my bed, everything. We move all of my shit and put it in his pickup truck and take it to their house. I feel so bad. My mom came home, had no idea, and my room is empty and like fully cleaned and vacuumed. Like I just left. And they facilitated this. Like she told me to do it this way.
Yeah.
With no regard for my mom. Also want to back up to, because my dad died when I was young. I don't know if you experienced the same thing, but you get the Social Security check.
I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay. How old were you?
12.
Okay.
11,
well, then
12.
your mom probably got it, which is a thing, right? Like it was hard out here for some single mothers. So I got this check. It was like almost $1,000 back in 2000. My dad died in 2005. So from 2005 until I turned 18, it was either 18 or 19, they give it to you until I got this check every month. And so did my older brother. He only got it for a year because he was 17 when my dad died and then he turned 18. I think it went away. But I got this check from the time I was 14 till I was 18. Now my mom took that money and used it for rent. And her excuse was always like, your dad owed me for child support. And it's like the point of that money, I mean, it's technically for the kid. Looking back, I'm like, I understand why she used it. But being a kid and wanting the money, I'm like, I just want the money. Like, I want to save it. I want to have it. And by the way, my mom was and still is not a very financially stable person. And there were lots of times where she would like borrow money from us and like maybe not give it back or give it back very slowly, and just always needed to borrow money. And it was like very like, we were very parentified. So my mom needed a lot of caring for, and, you know, she just always needed so much like help, it seemed like, financially and otherwise. And so, so we move all my shit out of my mom's apartment, an empty room, and I move into Tammy's house, and they have a 3-bedroom house. And so their girls were in separate bedrooms at this point. The girls are 4 and 2 when I move in, and they move the oldest out of her room in with the youngest, and they make that my room. We like set my bed up, and it's like my whole room. And something that she would tell me, Tammy, she always remembers the first time she met me, is that I had 2 candy bars and I ate them one after the other. And she was just like, this girl like just eats junk. And I just remember being like, why the fuck are you telling me this? You know, like I had turned 18 and moved in with them, and she would tell this story like it was funny, but it embarrassed me because I did struggle with weight and I did struggle with like emotional eating. And then she told me that I looked like a tick. So I had a very small head, but a big body, but I was so pretty. And I'm like, yeah, same old story. I always had such a pretty face. That's all people ever said. But like, I knew that I was overweight. But these are things where I'm like, she would tell me things like to like hurt my feelings. But under the guise of like, they were a joke to her, like they were funny. And she would like tell people, like her friends, like when we, you know, had friends over when I lived there. And I just remember being like, can you just not tell people that? Like these things embarrass me. Also the fact that you thought I looked like a tick. And I remember like laughing with her, but absolutely not thinking it was funny. It like really hurt my feelings, but just like, why are you telling people this? Things were getting increasingly like worse with my mom and I. And at a certain point, one morning before school, I had like we had like computer desks in our room back in the day, and I had like my chair, and my mom and I got in this big fight, and she like flipped the chair at me, like flicked it at me. And it like hit me, but like it wasn't that bad. But of course, I'm like a teenager and I'm like exaggerating, and I'm telling a friend in the hallway that like my mom threw a chair at me this morning. She did like leave me sitting outside. I missed the bus. It was cold, and like she like left and didn't take me to school. And Tammy came to pick me up to take me to school because I was like, hey, I don't have a ride. My mom left and I missed the bus. So she came and picked me up. And I didn't tell her this in the car. I told a friend outside in the hallway, and she overheard it, and she called me in her classroom later and was like, did your mom throw a chair at you? And I was like, no, like, you know, now I'm like scared. I'm like, oh my God, like, I don't want to get my mom in trouble. And she's like, tell me the truth. And like, because I like idolized her, I'm like, okay. I was like, I mean, yes, you shouldn't like pick it up and throw it at me, but she kind of like flicked it at me. She called CPS on my mom. Now, I understand she's a mandated reporter, but the fact that she didn't report me for having cigarettes and like probably so many other things that I talked to her and told her about, but the second something happens with my mom, she's running to call CPS, which is like a big deal. Like that's not something small. So we had to do like all these meetings. My poor mom, who made her own bed, you know, in decisions she has made throughout her life and our lives. But this, I was like, okay, this feels like a lot. Like her and my stepdad were back and forth. Like I think divorce at this point, who the hell knows? And she's a single mom and like has these 2 young boys and me at home. And we have to go to these like CPS meetings. And I remember like wanting to ride with Tammy and Tammy taking me home. And it's like all of us, like, so it was me, my mom. Well, my mom was like the person, I guess, like the defendant. It's me, Tammy, my aunt, which is my mom's sister. My sister was kind of like a parent to me. She had to be a parent. She was the oldest of the 5 of us. And yeah, she was like a parent basically. So I'm like wanting to ride home with her. And like, I'm going to my mom's house. Like I'm riding back home with my mom, and Tammy's driving out of her way 30 minutes to take me back. Cause like the courthouse was like somewhere, you know, 30 minutes away, whatever. Was it the courthouse? Whatever it was. It wasn't like we were in court, but we had to do these like CPS meetings. And so these were my witnesses, like my sister and my aunt and Tammy. And it was just like it was like ganging up against my mom. And it was like a lot of fighting about that Social Security money and like the conclusion or decision we came to was she was going to use the next 2 or 3 months, half of it for her rent and give me the other half. And then in 6 months, she was going to give me all of it. Even though it was mine, but whatever, I still understand this. It just became this fight about money and about her being abusive. And like, yes, she was. I don't want to make excuses for that, but I don't feel like Tammy calling, CPS or being a mandated reporter was in like good faith. I don't think her intention was to be helpful. I think it was to stick her claws into me more because I think she just really needed a lot of attention herself. And I think it felt good for her to have me like idolize her. She also thought she was like hot shit, like would always be like taking selfies of herself. And I know we all have different ideas maybe of what attraction are or what being an attractive person is or in this society, whatever. But I'm just going to be honest. She's not a very attractive person. So the fact that it was very obvious she was very insecure, and her sense of self was inflated, but like unnecessarily. And I think it was, a facade, to like make herself feel good. So we have this like whole CPS thing. It's very awkward with my mom after that. Obviously I'm like living with her. And I think my mom probably felt like she was losing me to this woman because she was, but she didn't really say anything. And, my mom was so, I think, bogged down by just the insanity of her life and my stepdad and having 2 boys that were younger and still needed a lot of attention. I think she was probably just like, cool, like you have somewhere to go, it's safe, and like you're hanging out. And like, I don't think she realized that it was like so inappropriate.
I do think, like you said, it was a woman.
Yeah. Yes. So if this had been a man, my mom would have immediately been like, hell no. But because it's a woman, she's like, oh, this is a nice woman. My mom had many meetings with her. Okay, remember, like, I have an IEP. So, like, I think it's quarterly. So every 3 months, your parent or guardian has to come in and meet with your guidance counselor, the principal, and Tammy, my emotional support teacher, and they have this, meeting, and I'm in there and we talk about like what's going well, what's not, what needs to change, how am I doing, etc. Also, I'm still grieving the loss of my dad, right? So I'm like 16 in high school and was still struggling with that. Okay, so we moved forward. I graduated, I moved in with them. I am going to community college at this point. Tammy brings me an application home from the daycare that her girls go to. And I put in an application and I get hired. So I'm working at the daycare that her girls go to. And I'm taking them every morning, like that I work with me and like dropping them off and picking them up when I'm done. So I also become like a third parent here, which is also how it was growing up with like my 2 little brothers. So to me, it was like, I kind of enjoyed it. I loved kids. I loved their kids so much. And I'm going to community college, like I said, and I have some assignments that I have to do. And I ask if I can use Scott's computer. So Scott worked from home, still does. And he had like a whole office with a computer and something else, monitor and a laptop and whatever. And so I used his computer to do a school assignment. Not gonna lie, I'm a bit of a nosy person. So when they would like leave and just, like go on vacation or whatever, and I was living there, I would just like hang out at their house, which was my favorite. I loved their house. They had a pool. It was fun. I would snoop around a little bit. I was looking around to see what I could find. Found lots of like sex toys, which like fine, have sex toys, that's cool. But on their computer, he had left an email up, and I had started feeling like they're like really close with their friends. Like maybe some weird shit's happening. Well, he left an email up and I'm like, you're going to leave it up. I'm going to read it. So it's an email from their friends. I'll just say their friends' names too, Dave and Heather. But Scott worked at a place with this couple, Dave and Heather, and became close with them. And so like they all became like close friends. Also, Scott and Tammy have their very best friends, Kevin and Rashawn, who I loved. And Kevin also worked with Scott and Dave and Heather at this same place. Okay, so there's an email from Dave to Scott, and they're discussing boundaries and how they have been crossed. And I'm reading more and more, and I can't remember exactly what the email said, but it was very obvious that they were having sex with their friends and feelings got involved, and somebody stepped a line somewhere that was drawn apparently in this sand. And I remember being like, what is going on? And also I was like, it's kind of exciting. It's like drama, and like I'm 18, and it was just like new. Like I was like, what is this? So then I like, you know how like you have a bunch of boxes up, or like websites, and you can like move them on the screen around. So I like kind of click and like move one to the side, and I see it's like swingers.com. And I'm like, yo, what is this? So they had like made an account with this swingers account. And I'm like, oh my God, like, okay, wow, weird. So then I also think, well, I'm just going to look at the photos on his computer. Well, a couple months before that, I decided Tammy and I had this joke, like, we should go get our nipples pierced or something. I don't remember how this joke came about, but I get serious because I am given a dare, or like I think of something and I'm going to do it. I was a little wild. And so I was like, I'll do it. And she's like, I'll do it too. She, of course, chickened out, but I get my nipples pierced. She goes with me. So this is a trip that me, Tammy, Heather, and Rashawn all go on, like a girls' trip. They are like 30, my throat, 31 years old. I'm like 18. They're 32. I'm 18. Or like, yeah, they're like 30, something like that. I mean, I just can't imagine, like, I'm 34 now. I would never be caught dead. Like me and all my friends, and we're just hanging out with some like random 20-year-old chick. Like, yeah. I don't know. It's just kind of weird. Not to mention I was her student. So I wonder if her friends were like, this is kind of weird. Well, we're on this trip. We go get my nipples pierced. And we got home. I'm living with them. Scott was on a work trip. So he was gone for, I don't know, a week after that. I can't remember. Or maybe this was in the hotel room. Anyways, she tells me, you should send Scott a picture of your nipples. Like, he would love, like, he just thinks that kind of stuff is cool. Like, he would just love that. And I remember being like, really? But you want me to send a picture of my boobs to your husband? But I had like started to figure some of these things out. And I can't remember if I saw the email before or after this, but I was just like, okay. So I do. And I think he said something like very, very nice, or like whatever. And I'm starting to feel like, okay, like I kind of like that, you know, like I've also never had a lick of attention paid to me by men because I was a kid and I was, you know, but I was like overweight, didn't feel good about myself, like just probably not the most attractive in high school. I think we all go through that phase. And so I'm like, wow, this is exciting. Like, these are older people. They're paying attention to me. And then it turns into one night we're like all hanging out and we're like laughing, and they would like let me drink a little bit. I mean, I was 18, not 21, but still an adult, I guess. And then she says to me, so they have a pool and it was winter and it froze over. And she was like, Scott, let's get naked and like run out on the pool. And she's like, will you take pictures of us? And I was like, yeah. But I'm like, oh, okay. Like, this is what fun is. Okay. So I take pictures of them, like with her. I think it was with like one of those little digital cameras. They're naked. They're fully naked. She has like a hat and gloves. She's like trying to be sexy on this pool. He's fully naked. And I'm like, okay, like this is funny, but also like this is a little strange. But I'm like, to me, it's like, I think feels exciting because I'm just like, these are older people and like apparently this is what they do. And so it's like, yeah, it starts to get like weird. They're having friends over, and I start to realize, wow, they like to like party. So there's like a lot of drinking, a lot of smoking weed. I remember being in the shower at one point and her saying to me, her are you mad at me? And I was like, I need context. What would I have to be mad at you for? And she's like, because I smoked weed with Scott and his brother the other day. And I was like, I mean, I guess you can do whatever you want. She's asking me this. Also, it was a different time back then, like in 2009. It wasn't as like, you know, everyone does it now. So it was still a little bit where it was like you could be looked down upon if you smoked weed, especially if you're a teacher smoking weed. But I think because of my dad dying from an overdose and just so much addiction in my family, I think she was insecure. And knowing that it probably, what was happening was not appropriate. And I think that was starting to like become apparent to her. And she was just like, I've already made these decisions, so I'm just going to shove that. But like asking me like, are you mad at me? And I'm like, no, I mean, I was a little irritated. And I'm also like, I was irritated I wasn't invited. You know what I mean? Like there was a lot that they would be secretive about or like tell me things or tell me they were going places and like not invite me because it would have been weird for her to be like, this is my student turned friend / third parent of my kid. You know what I mean? So I think she was insecure about it, but it was like also hurtful for me because there was like, you know, I wanted to be invited to everything and I realized that you can't, but I'm living with them and I don't really understand all of this. And then at one point, I remember I was going to take the girls outside. It was probably like a Saturday, like 10 a.m. I was going to take the girls outside to play in the snow. And it had snowed and it was around Halloween time. So it snowed kind of early. And I remember putting them in these like cute little Halloween outfits. And I went into Scott and Tammy's room that connected through like a bathroom. I guess you call that almost like a Jack and Jill, but there was not another bedroom connected to it on the other side. But I walked through, they're in bed, which isn't abnormal for me to like just go into their room and be like, hey, I was like, hey, I'm going to take the girls outside. I like, look at these cute little outfits I put them in. She was like, okay, great. And I was like, okay, like she acted a little weird. And so we come back in and I think the kids went downstairs to watch TV or something. And I remember her saying to me, she's like, when you came in our room, he was literally inside me when you said that. And I was like, and she's like laughing, like thinks it's like funny because they're very sexual people and they're starting to like
get comfortable.
Yes. To tell you, yeah. And I was like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Weird that you're telling me that. Ew, I don't, like I walked in there with your children and you're like, what was the point of telling me, I guess? I don't know, to be funny or be sexual. I don't know. I'm like, okay, good for you. Okay. So it's like little things like these that are happening. She left her phone on like the windowsill of their bathroom one evening and I don't know if they left and he had his phone and she just didn't take hers, but I looked through her text because she was just like acting weird. And she was like talking about me in the text. Like, she's just around all the time. And like, I just want to smoke weed and like be left alone. And I'm thinking, you moved me into your house. Where else am I fucking supposed to go? So some time goes by. By the way, I only lived there for, I think it was like 8 months before it all went to shit. But one night, Dave, Heather, Kevin, Rashawn, Tammy, and Scott all go out to a bar to watch the Ravens-Steelers game. So I'm a Ravens fan. Scott is a Steelers fan. As we know, that's what's that called? Rivalry. Yeah. And back then it was like a big rivalry, like really serious. People were like mad over it. So I, of course, am volunteered. Well, I can't go to a bar anyways because I'm only 18, but I have to stay home and watch all the kids. So like Kevin or Sean bring their oldest daughter. They didn't have their youngest at that point. Dave and Heather bring their son, and I have Tammy and Scott's 2 kids. So I have 4 kids under the age of like 3, 4, which I babysat. I worked at a daycare. Well, that wasn't a problem. It's just that like they went to a bar. It was just like, you know, just hang out with the kids. We'll pay you, whatever. And I'm still like, this is cool. Like I'm chilling at their house by myself. They trust me with their kids. And the Ravens scored or something. And Scott and I had this rivalry because he was a Steelers fan. And I had texted him and maybe I sensed, I mean, how could I not? I had sent him a picture of my boobs under her, you know, suggestion. Nothing had happened before this, but maybe there was like some tension. And so he's texting me and I text him back about the Ravens scoring and I say, haha, suck it. And he says back, suck what? And I remember it was like everything just like changed in these texting. And I remember feeling like kind of excited by this. And I was like, I don't even remember what was said after that. But Tammy also struggled to control her alcohol consumption or how she behaved under the influence of alcohol. So she's always like, when she's drunk, she's not, nobody's home. She's gone. So they get home from this bar. All the kids are asleep. I'm downstairs on the couch. They all come down. We talk for a little. Everybody goes their separate ways. Everybody starts going to bed. And I truly don't remember in these texts what exactly was exchanged between him and I, except what I just said. And I'm sure it led to maybe more, or I can't remember. But he comes back from the bar. Everyone goes to sleep. Kevin, his best friend, is asleep on the couch next to us. And Scott, he just starts like, I don't want to say too much. Like, I don't want to say, can I say sexual stuff? Like, I don't know.
You say whatever you want.
Okay.
Whatever you're comfortable with, you can say.
Okay. We start like fooling around. That's what I can call it. I was like, what are the words here? Messing around. And him messing around with me. Just his hands, whatever.
Did he kiss you?
No,
Okay.
which is interesting. It's funny. I always look back and I'm like, we didn't even kiss. I remember that.
Yeah.
But I remember being like, I was like.
And where was she, Tammy?
Upstairs, asleep. Okay. She was drunk, upstairs, crazy, asleep. And we did this and I liked it a lot. But then also was like, what the fuck did I just do? Like, oh no. Because it's a split second thing. You're like, you know, you're feeling it. And then all of a sudden you're like, probably the biggest mistake of my life, maybe, and biggest mistake of his. So I wake up the next morning and and also Kevin was right there. I mean, he was drunk and asleep, but I just remember being like, wow, you're really going for it here. So it just turns into this, like, I feel like any chance we're like making out. They have a bar downstairs. We never had sex. Like, there was never any penetration, but there was like everything else and a lot of sexting. And
you and Scott, and she had no idea. You don't think? Okay.
And
question, and you might answer this.
Yeah.
Do you think that she wanted the three of you to be together?
I don't know if it would be the three of us together. I will answer this as we move forward. I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly.
I just can't imagine
any scenario where you'd be okay with this.
I can't imagine wanting another girl to send my guy, I know it was her husband, you know, but my guy, a picture of her tits in a sexual way. She can say what she wants. It was a sexual way.
Yeah.
If I didn't want something like that. And then especially when you add in like the swinger stuff, like, and yeah, who knows? But to me, if I had to guess, I would feel like eventually, or if circumstances were different or if it happened differently, I could just like foresee like a huge orgy happening or something. Or like, you know what I mean? Wanting, like it wouldn't surprise me if she wanted to involve you.
Well, the story goes on.
Okay.
There was another incident I found on my phone that happened kind of at the beginning of me living there. I remember we went to the grocery store, Tammy and I, and on the way back, she just was like, do you want to get a bottle of vodka and like go home and like make cookies? That's what it was, because it was around Christmas time, bake cookies and like just drink and hang out. And again, I'm like, I'm underage. And, you know, I was just like, I just remember being mature enough to think like, I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't be caught dead hanging out with any 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
Much less purchasing alcohol with the intent of like getting drunk with them. Like, it was very obvious what, and every time she drank, they weren't like people who had like a glass of wine. They like had nights. I wouldn't say they were like alcoholics and like drinking all day, every day.
They drank to get fucked up.
Yeah. It wasn't like they were going out and just having like
casual
a beer or a glass of wine. Like, they were drinking, and her in particular, like she just was the type that like can't control her drinking, and she would get very drunk and like act insane. So we mix it with fruit punch, red fruit punch. And I just remember getting drunk with her in the kitchen. Scott was downstairs watching football, and you know, you get drunk. I'm 18. Also, it's only been 4 years since my dad died, by the way, maybe even like 3.5 at this point. And I'm like crying about my dad at a certain point. I remember her holding me, and I was crying seriously so hard, like snotting. It was awful. And I remember Scott going to walk up the stairs, and then I think realized what was happening and was like, man, I'm going downstairs so I don't have to like walk through this. And I go to sleep. I'm very drunk. Like I get blackout drunk. Okay. And I wake up in my bed in the morning, and I had thrown up all over my bed in my room. And I had like a white comforter, and I threw up fruit punch. So it was all over my bed. Wasn't worried about that. It was the fact that it was on her floor. Now, she is the type of person who is very quick to irritation or to like
anger spurts.
Yeah, just like flip out on you and find a reason to do so. Mm-hmm. She is the classic, like, just like an unapproachable person. Like, she's not the type that looks smiley or kind. She's not warm and inviting. She was to me, I feel like, when I first met her, because I feel like that's what she was trying to do, but she is not an approachable or like personable person. And I knew she was going to be mad about this. She was also very like obsessed with like everything being like perfectly organized and clean. And I did not grow up like that and did not live in that way, but I had to while I lived there because she had like all these rules for me. And I'm like, holy shit. So I go downstairs. She's like hung over, but has 2 little kids. So she had to get up with them. And she gave them like goldfish for breakfast. And they're watching cartoons. And she's like passed out on the couch, clearly hungover. It was like a snow day. And I walked down and I just said, hey, how do I get like red stuff or throw up? I don't know how I said it, out of the carpet. And she said, I don't know, but you better fucking figure it out. And I was like, got it. Yup. And I like go to walk up the stairs, and she's like, grab the pine saw and scrub the shit out of it. And I was like, okay. And she was like mad. And I remember being like, you encouraged this. And now I'm in trouble. Like as if like I'm 18. Like she's getting me drunk. I threw up in my sleep too. I don't like, you can like choke and die. Yeah. I've never done that since, but I just remember being like, why is there a throw up? This is horrific. And it looked like a crime scene because it was red. So I got the pine saw and I scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed. And I remember her coming up and being like, you better fucking get it out of the carpet. Like, I don't care what happens today. If you have to stay up here all day, you're going to get it out of the carpet. And I was just like, I got it. You said it a couple of times now. And so, so this is like over the course of 6 weeks, after that first night of him and I like messing around. Okay. So I'm sorry now.
Going back. I don't even know. No, totally fine.
And I don't know when the throw up incident happened. I don't know if it happened before.
Okay.
Actually, I'm sure it happened before because I don't think I would have wanted to get drunk because I'd be afraid that I would say something maybe when I was drunk with her. I don't know. Who the hell knows? Anyways. No, that would have been before. The drinking would have been before. And they let me drink other times. That just happened to be like
bad time.
Like planned to get drunk.
Okay.
Not just like friends are over. Okay, Brooke, you can have a couple beers or like whatever. This was like, do you want to go to the store and grab vodka? Oh, sure. I'm 18. Hell yeah, I do. So over the course of like the next 6 weeks, we're like hooking up. So I guess this is what you would call a full-blown affair, maybe. Sure. We're like making out. Some of this stuff, I'm going to think about this if I want you to put it in there. I just feel like it makes me seem like some like sleazy little slutty 18-year-old who's like sleeping with this woman's husband, which is essentially what happened.
It's all in what you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
And there will always be people that think that.
Yeah.
But that's not the reality of it.
Right. So, and it also doesn't matter what anyone else thinks.
Doesn't.
This isn't for anyone
this
else.
Is your story.
This is for me.
Trust me.
Yeah. I need to because I feel like I'm telling the story in like with an audience. Like, obviously that's what's going to happen, but I feel like I need to get that out of here.
And you need to like, in my opinion, first of all, look, we all do things in life at times. This is once again not an excuse, but we all do things that are not always the best decisions, and they could hurt people. They could hurt relationships. Okay. But like, so what? You just don't talk about it because you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean? It's just like, if you don't want it in, if there's anything you don't want it in, email me, text me, that's fine. Yeah. But regardless, don't feel like that.
Okay.
For yourself and in general, like it's not to make excuses, but like you didn't just find this married couple on the side of the road.
Right. And be like, I want to like, fuck her husband.
So it's just like, you know.
Well, back then I didn't. Yeah. Well.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So.
Back then I didn't. Okay, continue.
So we had like boundaries, Scott and I, and it was no penetration, no sex.
So that was discussed.
Somehow, somewhere.
Okay.
I remember he had gotten foot surgery. He like popped a tendon in his foot and needed to get foot surgery. And which made him out of commission as far as like being able to drive or like, you know, pick the kids up and carry them up the stairs, those kinds of things. And then there was a snowstorm and he wasn't able to go out and like snow blow. They had like a long, steep drive. They do because they live in the same place. Long, steep driveway. So I remember Tammy snow blowing outside and him and I in their bed. I'm like, do I want to say that? He was like going down on me. Like, I'm in their bed and this is happening. We can just say we were messing around. I don't know what you want to cut out. But, and I remember their oldest daughter, she was 4 at that time. I remember hearing her walk up the stairs, Daddy. And we were like, and I like, he jumps up, like he didn't have a shirt on. He like threw a shirt on. His pants were still on. And he like throws covers over me and like runs out the door. And I just remember being like, oh God. So like Tammy's outside snow blowing. The kids are just like, it's a free for all. They're 4 and 2, just like in the basement watching cartoons. And him and I are like up in their bedroom. And I can't even tell you how these things like start, right? It's not like I'm walking upstairs and being like, so you want to do something? Like somehow there's some sort of exchange, I'm sure, and it leads to something happening. And then, you know, if she would like go stay, you know, she would frequently go shopping with Rashawn down where they live and I would be at home. Like she's like leave. Like I just also can't imagine having a teenage girl come live with me. It's like the babysitter, you know what I mean? In like those pornos. That's how it kind of feels looking back on it. But like leaving me, I'm 18, probably 19 at this point. And she's going down to like hang out with her friends and leaves me and Scott home with the kids all weekend, just like us by ourselves. Yeah. Even for like, she left for like 5 or 6 days at one point. It was just us there. I felt like there was a lot of space for these things to happen. I wouldn't say I think she consciously was like wanting this to be a thing, but she set it up to like make it so, like for him and I to like somehow fall into this is what I look back and feel like happened. So yeah, we're like messing around and I remember I don't know where Tammy was. Maybe she had taken the girls somewhere and it was just him and I think we had just messed around. We're in their bed, which I feel like is also just so disrespectful on his part. I mean, I guess mine too. And we're laying there and I remember him like holding me and like brushing my hair out of my face. And at this point, like he is somebody I had come to care about. Like they felt like my family. Like we were so close and I loved them. Like I feel like I cut the rest of my life off. I could have cared less. I just wanted, like I felt like we were family. Like these were my people.
Do you think that you had feelings for him?
I think what I had was, well, I was 19. I had attention from somebody. I felt like somebody really cared for me. And I will say, like, this story is going to progress into more. But I will say throughout the entire thing, he was always loving and kind towards me. And so what I think happened was she started to get so snippy with me all the time and like mean and would just say hurtful things. I feel like almost like gaslight me if we're going to use like therapy speak here.
Like you would lean on him more?
Yeah. So I think I started to feel like I was almost losing her, or it just wasn't working out or so well. And like I felt like where I initially felt so much love from her, that felt like it was dwindling, like the longer I was living there. And so then I was like, well, the closest I can get to her is him. And so obviously this was not conscious. These were not my thoughts back then. I don't think I really had any like true like combing through this to see how I was feeling. I was just doing it and like coasting through life. But yeah, back then I probably, if you asked me that question, I probably would have said yes, that I felt like I had feelings for him, but they weren't feelings like in love, I don't think. And I do think, again, therapy speak, but I do think it was probably something like what people call a trauma bond, you know? And also he had lost his dad when he was 11 to a really bad car accident. He was like hit by a tractor trailer and killed immediately. And we never really spoke in depth about it, but I knew it pained him just like it would pain anyone. And of course he was like a little boy. And I think we had like a shared thing over that. And I think she was just so crazy. Like, I think it was an outlet for him and no excuses. Like, he has none. This was totally inappropriate. I was 19. I think he was 31. And, so yeah, I remember laying in the bed that morning. He's like brushing my hair out of my face. And he's like, I love you, right? And I was like, yeah, I love you too. And he's like, and I love Tammy, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, and I love my kids. And I'm like, yeah, I know all of this. And he's like, I don't want to hurt you, but like, basically like this probably isn't a good idea. And I'm like, yeah, it probably isn't. And so yeah, this is for like 6 weeks. I remember going down to Kevin and Rashawn's with Scott. Rashawn and Tammy were going on a trip somewhere. So it's me and Scott taking the girls down to hang out with Kevin for the weekend while Rashawn and Tammy are gone. And so we're staying in their house and we're driving down. Like, it felt like sometimes Tammy would go do her thing and I was just like her replacement.
Right.
And he always said, like, Scott always said he loved, so much of what he loved about me was that I was so much like her. Which, looking back, I'm like, back then I loved that because I wanted to be like her. And now I'm like, you didn't love me for me. You know what I mean? We're driving down to Kevin's to go stay with him and his oldest. They only had one kid at that point. And we're driving. It's like nighttime. We're in their van. It's me and Scott. I'm like in the place where she would normally sit in the car. She's not with us. The kids are in the back. We're driving down. And I remember, when you're like, you're just starting to date someone and you're starting to flirt. Maybe there's like some sexting involved and it's like very intoxicating. It's like very exciting. And you like can't wait to like text this person or they say something and you get like that like rush. And I remember him saying to me something about like, I can't wait to take advantage of you tonight. And I just remember being like, part of me likes that. And the other part of me is like, that's probably not appropriate and whatever. So we put the kids to bed. Kevin goes to bed. His kid goes to bed. And Scott and I are in the basement. They have a 3-story house, Kevin and Rashawn. And Scott and I are in the basement. And we have a baby monitor on to see if like the kids, woke up. Again, they're 4 and 2 at this point. And their oldest kept waking up. I think she was like getting an ear infection. She kept crying. And we're like downstairs like doing something. So he like stops, goes upstairs, makes sure she's okay, comes back down. This happens like 2 or 3 times. So before finally it's like, this is not working. Just like go to bed. But we probably spent like 4 hours down there, like just messing around essentially. And I remember feeling like, oh, this is not good. And like those kids are up, like I just was like, oh, what am I doing? So that happened. And then it was like, I remember one day I was in college classes. I was at a community college and he was sexting me and I was like, I'm going to leave class. I'm going to skip my next class and like come home. He was like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah. Tammy was at work. So I got home. I remember we showered together, which we had never done before. And I remember that feeling like a big line I crossed. Not that we didn't just cross one before. And just feeling like, I felt like my world was just like spin. Like I was just like, I do not know what I'm doing. Like the train has gone off the rails and this is insane. But I was like, it's also, I'm getting something, right? I'm getting some needs met. I'm feeling like someone's excited about me and like cares about me. And like, you're just so far into something that you're just like, I'm just going to let this play out how it plays out. Also, I'm still working at the daycare that their kids go to. So yeah, there's a lot of that. My sister was like so not cool with this, with me living there. Like she thought it was weird. I remember telling her and she was just like, I think the relationship that she has with you is inappropriate. And like, I don't think you should move in with her. But what's she going to tell me? I was 18. I was going to do whatever I wanted. Yeah. And my sister was already, I think, married. Yeah, she was married by this point, and like living her own life. So I remember telling Tammy, like, my sister, like, does not like this. My sister does not like you, kind of thing. And even when I went on that trip and got my nipples pierced, I remember calling my sister after. This is such like a annoying teenager thing to do, but I was like almost trying to get a rise out of my sister. Like I went and got my nipples pierced, which my sister, people who know her, she's very like straight edge and like a rule follower. So she was just like, why? Mm-hmm. And why are you telling me? And also, why did she take you to get this done? And Tammy would always say stuff like, it's like your sister thinks you're in a sex cult or something. And I remember thinking, well, you don't know about this like affair that's going on behind. So she must have been feeling very insecure about like the things they were doing and the swinging and like having sex with their friends. And it was just very crazy. So she would make jokes. Like she's like, what does she think? You're in a sex cult or something? And I'm like, no, she just thinks it's weird that I'm living with my teacher kind of thing. So that was always like a joke. So moving forward, that last thing about him like brushing my hair out of my face, I want to say maybe that's where we had a conversation where he was like, I think we like need to put an end to this. And I remember just being like, okay, like I felt sad, like, oh, this like attention I'm receiving and what I think, you know, or believe to be like love is, you know, gonna go away. And this isn't gonna be as like, you know, fun or exciting or whatever, but it is what it is. So I remember going to work at the daycare. I had taken the kids with me. Tammy and I had a plan that my mom would like, I was still on my mom's cell phone bill and she would forget to pay it and then like, or not be able to pay it and the phones would be shut off. So it was like my phone plan kept getting shut off and Tammy's like, why don't we just put you on our phone plan? And I'm like, okay. And I'm thinking, yeah, another way to like connect myself to you. Let's do it. So we had a plan after I got off work. It was a Friday. We were going to go put me on their phone plan. And I take the kids to their classes. I drop them off. I go to mine where I work. And he texted me. I used to remember like the text verbatim, but he said something like, I am so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. You know, I love and care about you. It was like something like that. Mind you, we lived together, but this is like, he's like ending our little affair that we've got going on. By the way, it was 6 weeks. So it's not like the whole time I was living there. And I say back, it's really okay. You did not hurt me. No worries. Whatever I said. And I should have known, should have been a sign that I kept trying to send this text and it wouldn't go through. Just kept saying like I didn't have service in the one room I was at the daycare, but I really wanted the text to send. So I'm like, okay. Now remember, he got foot surgery and he had went back for like a follow-up appointment. And I guess when they went to this appointment, Tammy had to drive him because his foot was out of commission. And he put his phone in her work bag. And back then our phones weren't like our everything. Mm-hmm. So like you would still go on your computer to search things. So we didn't use our phones like that. So he didn't use his phone like that. So he just put it in her work bag when they went to this appointment or whatever and left it in there. And she went to work the next day. And he had sent me that text the night before, but we had a thing where like you know, we wouldn't text obviously if she was like at home. And like sometimes they used each other's phones, not to like check them or go through them, but just as you would like pick up your, oh, I need to look at this thing or I need to like make this call or whatever, before our phones were our everything. And somehow he left his phone in her work bag. She goes to work. He had sent me that text the night before. I couldn't respond to the text until the next day when she was at work and we were, you know, not all in the house together. And so I send this text and the text goes to his phone, but she has his phone at work. And it says, like, you did not hurt me, no worries, whatever. And I tried to send it, like, I'm telling you, probably 8 to 10 times before it finally went through. And he was at home working, and they had just taken their landline out. So all he had was his email. Now, we had, and I don't even remember having this conversation with him, but somewhere along the line, we were like, hey, make sure you delete your text and I'll make sure I delete mine. So like our texts were always deleted to each other. So she opens his phone, sees this text, texts me back from his phone and says, now remember, we're going to get me put on their cell phone in like probably 2 hours was I leaving work. This was like probably 3 p.m. and I left work at like 5. And she said, this is Tammy. Sounds good. Sounds good about tonight. Because I had also texted her phone. But she responded to my text that I sent to her from his phone to like let me know that she saw it. And I just remember being like, world's over. Like, I could not. I was like, I have to get out of here. I have to leave this room right now. I have to grab the kids and like go home. And like, how can I get out of here? How can I go tell my boss? Like, sorry, emergency. And I like couldn't figure anything out. Like I was just like, there's no way to do this without my boss calling Tammy and being like, is Brooke okay? She took the kids and left early. Like I couldn't do that. Mm-hmm. And so I was just like, oh my God, as soon as I'm like supposed to get out of here, and I think I left like 5 minutes early, I'm grabbing the girls. And let me tell you, I was flying home with those little kids in the back seat on these back roads. And I'm like, if I can just get home before her somehow, you know, in your like mind where you're trying to convince yourself like this is all somehow going to be okay. He and I can like come up with some sort of way to like get ourselves out of this. And also there was, a large part of this was like, I do not want to hurt her. Like, this is somebody I love. I would have considered probably at that point, like I loved her more than anybody. Like I just idolized her. It was weird. She felt like a mother figure, a sister figure, a very close friend. And so I fly home with the kids and her van is already there. And she normally doesn't get home till quite a bit after me. And I'm like, that's it. The world's over. So I'm like I park in the garage. I like get the girls out of their car seats. I take them inside. He's like, Scott's like standing in the doorway and she's like standing across from the kitchen. And I can just see that the world has officially exploded. And he's like white as a ghost. She has like swollen eyes and is like the look. Now, this is a person who she can look like a straight, she's got a mean mug of the century. And she was like piercingly angry. I don't even know what to call. I just knew. I was like, I put my keys where I normally do. I walked right between them upstairs and into my room. And I just sat there on the bed and was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Like, I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And she comes up and she stands in my doorway and she looks at me and says, how dare you? After everything I've done for you, how dare you? And I was like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like crying. And she's like, you have till Sunday to get out of here. It was Friday. And I'm like, okay, like, I'm so sorry. And like, I remember like going downstairs and I was like, I don't know where I'm supposed to go. And she's like, that's not my fucking problem. And I was like, you're right, it's not. And I wanted it so badly to just be like, wait, can we discuss this? Like, I thought the swinging was okay. like, you know, like that's how I justified it in my mind was like, well, okay, well, they sleep with their other friends. And like, yeah, she didn't like give this the okay, but like, it's probably okay. Like, and it probably sounds crazy.
I think like to me, it would have been like, oh, but if it was on your terms, would it have been fine?
Say that. What do you mean?
Like if it would have been like speaking to her, like if it would have been on her, if it was on her terms, she probably would have been okay with it. Like, is it just because it was behind her back?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like it's
Yeah. So that's like how I felt and how I was able to justify it. And you know, I'm thinking of all these things like, well, she did have me send a picture of my boobs to him. So like, I thought somehow I was like, okay. I mean, obviously she wasn't like, yeah, go mess around with my husband. But so I went upstairs. I was in jeans. I could not come out of the room. I could not face her. I had to pee so bad and like I could not bring myself to get out of the bed to go pee because the bathroom was like connected to their room. I could not face them. And I just remember hearing them put the girls to bed and I am dying in my bed. Like I am like, oh my God, I've just ruined my life. I've ruined theirs. What am I going to do? I like didn't pee the whole night. I just laid there and cried. I don't think I slept even a second. And I woke up the next morning and she took the girls to one of those little like play places in the mall. It's called Tumbletown. And left me and Scott there, I guess to like give us time to talk or something. I have no idea. And they had this like old church pew. They're not religious at all, but it's an antique that was like up in their hallway. And he was sitting on that outside of my door. I think after like the morning happened, I still hadn't come out of my room. They like, you know, got the kids, you know, whatever together in the morning and like sent her off with them. And I think I finally peed and went back to my room and he was like sitting there and he was just like sitting like this. And I didn't say anything. And he was just like, I'm so sorry. And I was like, I don't even know. Like, I don't even remember what I said. I just remember standing up, taking my phone and just like smashing it into my dresser and it like broke into pieces. And I remember he was like trying to fix it. And I was like, don't fucking touch it. Like, just leave it. Like at that point, I was just like, I want to break shit, you know? And I was just like, how did we get here? And like, I don't want to leave. Like, I don't want this to be how this is going. And he just kept saying he was so sorry. And like, he thought like, you know, we could work this out, like me and Tammy or whatever. And I was just like, to them, I'm sure it was just like, you know, there's this girl, you had an affair and now you've got to go. And to me, my entire world had just exploded and came crumbling down. And then she changed her mind and was like, okay, you don't have till Sunday. You need to get out today. Like she had texted me and I'm like, all right, you know, your house. I realize what I've done. And at this point, I'm like putting a lot of this on myself. Like and that's how she was kind of making this seem like it was more on me. And I remember going into their room when she was gone the day I had to like pack up. And I just was like, is she going to leave you? And he was like, I don't know. We like talked about it. And later on, I found out that she was so upset and like that's her person, that she needed him to hold her when they like went to sleep. And something about the way she said it, I was just like, if you were so mad, like wouldn't the last thing you want to do be to like touch him? I don't know. And everybody, you know, processes things different. So maybe that was it for her. So I pack up all my shit. I leave. I get in my car and I remember a specific Pink song was playing. Like it was already in the middle of the song when I turned my car on. I just remember crying hysterically. I remember crying and like when I left, the kids were downstairs or maybe they were in bed when I left and I like hugged him and he hugged me and like held on to me for a minute and just said like, all new things are scary. Like, I'm so sorry, but like, you're going to be okay. And I was just like, oh my God. And I had decided my very best friend lives like 30 minutes away and I was going to go move into her house with like our other two friends in this small apartment. And Tammy was like, get all your shit and get out. And later this week, Scott and I will take down your bed and all your stuff and your dresser and we'll bring it to you like in his truck or whatever over to Kate's house.
Hey guys, today's episode is sponsored by Branch Basics. So if you have been watching this podcast for a little while now, I am sure that you have seen plenty of my babies. I have many animals in this house that always make guest appearances on the show. So that being said, something that has always been very important to me is safe cleaning products when it comes to cleaning up around the house, wiping down my counters, and things that are safe not only for me, but for the environment and aren't full of toxic chemicals. Most people don't realize this, but most conventional cleaning products are full of very harsh chemicals. They are not good for you, your skin, your environment, and inhaling these products and using them to wipe down your surfaces that you're eating off of or constantly touching is just doing more harm than it is doing good. I am personally someone that has always taken cleaning products used in my house very seriously. Even over the years when I've had people come in and clean my home, I've always asked them to use human safe products that I personally have given them, or just products in general that don't contain super harsh toxins or chemicals. And that being said, this is where Branch Basics comes into play. Their premium starter kit replaces dozens of toxic cleaners with just one powerful plant and mineral based concentrate. What I absolutely love about Branch Basics is there is absolutely no synthetic fragrances or harsh chemicals. Everything is real and very safe for your home, your babies, and your pets. Branch Basics keeps things super simple with just one fragrance-free formula that actually works. And I have to mention, you can literally use this formula for pretty much anything you can think of. Deep messes, simple cleans. You can use it on your produce, your makeup brushes, your countertops, your bathroom, your laundry, literally anything you can think of. And that's why I love this product, because it's simple and it gets the job done, but it also does all of these things with being super safe for not only yourself and the environment, but everyone in your household as well. I just want to talk about the refill model really quick, because this was something that I noticed was so cool and super unique to the brand. So basically, the refill model makes it easier to keep your home clean year round. Once you run out, all you need to restock is the concentrate and the oxygen boost, and one concentrate equals 13 refills. Make this year the year you say goodbye to toxic products. Right now, our listeners get 15% off the premium starter kit by using code WAI at branchbasics.com. That's 15% off your new Branch Basics premium starter kit at branchbasics.com with promo code WAI. Make 2025 your cleanest, healthiest year yet with Branch Basics. And now back to the episode.
And I am like distraught. I leave for days. I'm like depressed, like on Kate's couch, like just crying. And I'm like, trying to text Tammy and like tell her I'm so sorry. And like, I'm also like a kid, like I'm 19 and I'm just like, please, like just hear how sorry I am. And she was like, I don't want your fucking sorries. And like, just like entertaining me and then like yelling at me. And I was just like, I just like didn't know what to do. And I remember her best friend, Rashawn, called me and was like, hey, I know you're really struggling and like, we all love you, but like, you can't contact her anymore. Like, and I just remember being like, oh, okay, like, where'd you come from? But oh, all right, I hear that. Like, I won't say anything else. And I texted Scott and just said, thank you for like letting us use your truck. And I probably shouldn't have. I was genuinely grateful. And I think I also wanted to like text him. And I remember her being like, don't fucking text him. Like, there's nothing for you guys to talk about that's so inappropriate or like whatever. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Now I've done another thing. And she brought me my stuff in the truck. She helped me unload it. We put it in my new room at my best friend's house and we went and got coffee. And we were talking and I just was like, is there any way you can forgive me? And she was like, I don't know at this point, whatever. Okay, fine. So basically that's like it for that portion of it. And at that point I was 19 and, what she had said was basically like, she was like, I want to know how you're doing. And like, I want to know how your life goes, but like, I just don't know where I'm at right now. And then I remember she got drunk a couple days later and had texted me and was like, like, I love you. And like, I miss you so much. Like, I don't understand like how this happened. And like, we can't go back. And you just like ruined everything. And I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I love you too. And like, just to even get a text from her to hear how much she missed me and loved me, I was just like so elated. but also just like so very, very heartbroken. And then I was getting drunk and like calling her at like 2 a.m. And I remember like throwing up in some bushes and like, she was like, are you okay? Like, are you safe? And I was like, yeah, but like, I just miss you. And like, it was just like really weird. And I just remember her texting me and being like, you cannot call me drunk. Like, whatever. So I am like, what am I going to fucking do with my life? I decide to join the Navy, just like on a whim. I was in TJ Maxx on the phone with my friend Sam. And we were like, you know, that guy we went to high school with, he does like, you know, Army guard or whatever. And he makes like $200 1 weekend a month. Like back then we were like, we thought this was great. And I just remember being like, Sam, I think I'm going to like join active duty. Like, I think I'm going to go into the military. And she was like, are you serious? And I was like, yeah. And I'm kind of like that. Like if I get something in my head, I'm going to do it. So I went on this little trip with my mom and my little brother for like this, you know, those timeshare things. Like if you go listen to like a thing, you get a free dinner and like a free night stay. So my mom wanted to do that. And I remember being on the Army website all night, like, looking at everything, reading every forum I could. And I was like, I'm joining. And my mom's like, no, you're not. And like, I'm somebody who can't be told what to do. Like, I don't like that. So it was laughable that I would even think I was joining the military. So I go through this whole process. It ends up that I join the Navy. I remember texting Tammy. So like at this point, it would be like, we would text occasionally, or I would tell her what was up in my life. And she might say she was like really proud of me or whatever. And like, that was the extent. So I join the Navy, active duty. I get stationed in Guam. I got in a really bad motorcycle accident when I was 21. I was hit by a car on my 21st birthday on the back of the motorcycle and sustained a lot of injuries. And I remember like telling her about that, and I felt like she could have cared less. I just wanted to talk to her any reason. And I just felt like she was like, okay, like, are you okay? Cool. I just wanted more. Like, I just wanted to be back in with them. So this like goes on. I'm like messaging her, whatever. So I get orders to Virginia, Norfolk, worst place ever. And I'm there for 2.5 years, like the last 2.5 years of being in the Navy. And I don't even really, so what would happen is when I finally got stationed there was a discussion that happened where she was like, hey, I think I'm ready to like see you, kind of thing. And I was like, oh my God, like, okay. And she's like, why don't you come over on whatever day? Like I was home on leave or something and Scott was at work, and she was like, why don't you come over and like hang out with me and the girls for a few hours? So that's like kind of how it would go. So this was probably, so I joined the Navy in 2011. And this all happened with her. Like I met her when I was 16 in like 2007 or 2008. I graduated high school in 2009. I lived with them from 2009 to 2010. It's like a year in between I joined the Navy and it's like 2011. So it's been, I don't know, like 1.5, 2 years since I lived there. And she was like, just come here. Like, you know, maybe we'll have dinner before Scott gets home or like whatever. And so this would occasionally happen. I would come home. I would like drive home. And then she tells me, she comes and visits me in Norfolk. She spends the night. I have like this little twin bed that we shared in my barracks room. And we went out with my friend. She was like one of my good friends in the Navy one night. And we go out. We drink, and Tammy, because she can't learn to drink, she drinks a lot, and she meets this guy named Vic, and he was like big, muscly, like looked like he did steroids. And they're like dancing. I think we went to a club, who knows? And I'm with my friend and her boyfriend. And this friend was whatever. I had told Tammy stuff about this friend. Like, I'm like, she She's like a serial dater kind of thing. And Tammy gets very drunk and proceeds to tell this girl's boyfriend, you need to be careful with her because she gets around. Which is not what I said, first of all, but like just like starting shit, but she was also drunk. It was like really weird. So they end up getting in this argument, and then we're in an Uber or whatever it was back then, a cab, I don't remember, on the way back from this club. And Tammy's got this guy, Vic, with us. I think we were going to another club or a bar. I don't know. We're in the back seat. My friends are in the front, the driver, and I'm sitting in the back seat. Tammy's here. Vic's on the other side. And I'm like looking out the window. I'm like kind of tipsy, whatever. And I just remember seeing his hand like rubbing her between the legs. And she's like moaning and like moving her legs. And it's like hitting my leg. And they're like making out. And I'm like, can you not? Like, this is very awkward. You're like touching me as this is happening. And then I don't know how this happened, but the next day, Vic starts like texting me, and Tammy was so jealous and she was like so mad. Also, he was like mid 40s. I'm like 21, 22. So that was really weird. The argument happened with the friends. Then like I couldn't even get Tammy up to the apartment. She was like being so crazy. And I finally did. She like passes out drunk on the floor, wakes up and is like, oh my God, like, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I acted like that with your friend. And then a couple weeks later, she asked me if I wanted to go to Tennessee, which is where she's from. Scott's on a work trip, and she had like this vacation rental for a week. And so she asked me if I wanted to go with her and the girls, their kids, Scott and Tammy's kids, who were at this point probably 8 and 6, I think, maybe 9 and 7. If I want to go on vacation with her for a week with the girls to Tennessee without Scott. And I was like, okay, like I just want to be back in good terms with her. So I'll go. So I go. The first night we leave the kids in this vacation home. Okay. They're 8 and 7, or 8 and 6 or 9 and 7. I forget how old they were. She leaves her with a cell phone, the oldest. Tammy leaves her with a cell phone. And Tammy and I go like moonshine tasting in downtown Gatlinburg. And we're like walking around and like going to dinner. And I remember I wanted to stay out a bit longer. And she's like, I have kids at home. I need to get home. That's how she would like always talk to me. And I'm like, okay, you're the one who suggested that we come out here and go moonshine tasting and we leave your children. I mean, we're talking like 9 and 7, left them home alone. So we could drive 30 minutes and do moonshine. I just remember being like, I don't think I'm good with that, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then the next night, her mom takes the kids and me and Tammy go out with her brother, Kevin. And this is a different Kevin from their friend. We get drunk. We're at this bar. I remember like being on my phone looking for something, and she was like, can I see your phone for a second? And I was like, sure. And she took my phone and scrolled down through my contacts to see if I still had Scott's name in there. And she was like, it makes me love you even more because you don't have his name and number in there. And I was like, okay. Like, and I was like annoyed. I felt like my privacy was violated, but also I'm like, does she have the right to do that? And she's like, no, like, listen, it's a good thing. Like, it makes me love you even more. Like, I'm just like so glad or whatever. And I was like, okay. Her brother ends up hitting on me. And then I'm like, can I go home with your brother? And she's like, yeah, like, I think that's great. Like, you should do that or whatever. So we had to stop by back at our vacation condo and grab me clothes or whatever. And she's like she's drunk and she's jumps up on my bed because I like had my own room in this vacation thing. And she's like about to pee on my bed. Like, just so out of her mind drunk. By the way, there's children. I mean, they're asleep. And her brother's like, no. Like, and we have to like get her. And I just remember like having to like rein her in and like put her to bed and like went with him and like slept with him. And she picked me up the next morning and it felt like a true walk of shame. And it was just very awkward. So that was just like a weird thing that happened. And I felt like I was in at that point. Like back in. And so I think a couple weeks goes by. We like talk while I'm in the Navy. I end up, I had this very good friend, Jess, who, looking back, I think I probably had feelings for, but like that was so buried deep down probably. But we like loved each other so much. And I remember wanting to get out of the Navy so I could like go up to Boston and like move with her. And we had met in Guam. She was my personal trainer there. We became really good friends. And so I moved up there with her the day I got out of the Navy, which was in 2014. And I lived with her for like a year. And in this year, Tammy and I maintained contact. And then I think it was probably around Christmas time, I had gone home from living with Jess, like just to go home for Christmas. And I remember Tammy texting me and saying, hey, why don't you come over? Scott will be here. It'll be fine. Like, I'm okay with you guys. Like, I've forgiven you and I'm okay with you being in the same place now. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like texting her, like, tell him not to be weird. Like, he can hug me, but don't make it weird, whatever. And she was like laughing, like, okay, it's fine. So I go over there. It was like awkward at first, like very awkward. I hadn't seen him in 5 years. This whole thing happened. Yeah. I'm older now. I was 24. And there was like this tension between him and I. And I mean, looking back, I can see it for what it was. I think it was just like the first the first man that like paid me true attention in that way was here again, kind of thing. So we hang out, we have a couple drinks. I was staying at my mom's house. I leave their house probably like 11 p.m. I had been there since probably like 5 p.m. I drive back home. I like go to crawl in bed at my mom's where I'm staying. And I get a text from a number that wasn't saved, but I knew it was his because it had like the same first few numbers as hers. And it said, hey, this is Scott. Tammy gave me your number and said that I could text you. It can be whatever you want it to be. But I wanted you to know it was so good to see you tonight. You look like you're doing really well. You look really good. And I can't remember that. That was kind of it. And I just remember being like, now, I forgot to say this part. Tammy has a boyfriend in Tennessee named Tony. So I guess I have to back up a little bit. And I don't even remember where I think she got with this guy in like 2015. So now they're polyamorous.
Okay.
So she's got this boyfriend.
So they're together, but they're allowed to date other people at this point.
Yes.
Okay.
But it's like, has to be like approved by the partner.
Right.
Whatever.
Okay. They're not all hooking up. It's just separate.
Well, yes, they are.
Okay.
Not Scott and Tony, but like, I think they all three hook up together.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever. So, I like know this. Mm-hmm. Going over to their house.
Okay.
But it was very new that she was with Tony. And Tony was a teacher in Tennessee. They had taught together before she moved to the state that I was in, where she was my teacher, when they had finished grad school. And he became a principal of a school in Tennessee. So at this point, he's a principal. She's a teacher still. In the school district that I was in. He's a principal in Tennessee. I just think that goes with it because they're all in the school system. It's kind of weird. So the way she tells this story, she essentially had an affair or cheated on Scott with this guy, Tony, back when they were teachers, when Scott and Tammy also were very young. So like before she came to my school
Tony's
district.
Been around.
So Tony was around, but like it wasn't allowed to go anywhere. Mm-hmm. It ends, Tammy and Scott moved to the state that they're in now, and Tony stays there in Tennessee. He gets married, has a wife. His wife ends up cheating on him with his best friend and like is still to this day with him. Okay. And they divorce. And somehow Tammy and Tony reignite this parent flame they had back in the day. Mm-hmm. And he becomes her boyfriend. And so now they're polyamorous.
Got it.
And so, so I needed to like say all of that.
So he texts you.
Yes. And says,
it can be what?
Yes. So good to see you. It can be whatever you want. And I'm like,
what does that mean?
It was a lot in this text. Like, I just saw you for the first time. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? And he was like, it can be sexual or it can be not. Like, we have essentially, I don't think he said open marriage, but we're polyamorous or like whatever.
It's also just like fucked up because it is gaslighting if you look at it from, I don't care what people say or think, like, okay, you could look at anyone in this situation or story and say they were at fault at some point, you know?
Yeah.
But like her picking and choosing when it's okay for you to like send her husband tip pics, but then you can't fool around with him behind her back. But then 5 years goes by and now that she's with multiple people, all right, okay. Now you guys can fuck. Like it's just like it's almost like, and I don't know the term for that, but it's like when somebody, like it reminds me of what you were saying before, like she'd bully you just so that you'd lean on her more. And then it's like she's yelling at you and putting you down, but then bringing you back in and then doing it again.
It's a push and pull.
Yeah.
It's like I guess if you want to call it that, like an abuse tactic.
Yeah.
And she's now my former therapist. We'll refer to her as Kay. Mm-hmm. Love her so much. She's helped me so much. So I will say okay, hold on. Let me go back to where I was. We'll get there.
Okay.
So he tells me, I say, what I just said. And somehow this conversation goes into, okay, I'm going back. I just came from there. Okay. That's how the text happened. Thanks so much for coming over. So great to see you, blah, blah, blah. Tammy said I could text you. The first thing I did was I texted Tammy before I responded to him and said, do you know that Scott is texting me? He said that you do. She said, yes, thank you so much for checking. I have no qualms about you having a relationship. I'm like, okay.
And the thing is too, there was probably a part of her too that wanted you to text her. And if you didn't, she would have been mad.
I knew that.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that, which is why I texted her. And also wanted her to, it was this weird thing, right? Like, not in this situation. I wasn't like, oh, I want her to be proud of me, but I wanted her
to like trust you.
Yeah. Like I felt good about that. So, we decide I'm going to come back over. I had just left there and gotten back to my mom. So I'm like, I'm going to drive the other 25 minutes back and go see this person. I was so nervous that I stopped at a gas station and got a pack of cigarettes and smoked one cigarette and threw the rest away and drove over there and walked down the stairs. And I just remember him looking at me and saying, well, that escalated quickly. And like, that was it. And like, then we had sex for the first time because we didn't back in the day.
Yeah.
It was like awkward. And you can cut some of this out, but like he like couldn't keep it up. Like it was just like, because he was so nervous.
There's a lot of pressure there.
Yeah. But it was like that. We did have this it wasn't genuine attraction. It was like, I think what felt so intoxicating about it initially was for me, the attention, but also it's like secretive.
Yeah, you're doing something wrong.
And it becomes like intoxicating.
It's thrilling.
Yes, thrilling is the word. So, but she knows now. And I remember being like, where is Tammy? And he's like, she's upstairs on FaceTime with Tony and she's okay. And I was like, okay. And then I spent the night. And that's kind of what happened. Like we got into a relationship.
Wow, you guys actually started dating.
Yeah. And I was in it for 3.5 or 4 years, maybe 4.5 before I ended it. And there's a lot in there that I can go forth with. So that happens. I'm living in Boston. I go back to Boston with Jess, and Scott and I are like talking on the phone for like a couple of hours, a few different times. And I always realized he was drinking beers when he was doing that, but he wasn't like a big drinker, not in the way that she was. He could like control himself. And I just remember him like calling me baby, and it just like didn't feel natural. But whatever, I was like happy to get some attention again. And we decide, like I'm back up in Boston, and Tammy says it's okay that he can come visit me up there for a few nights. So he gets a hotel and he comes up and he visits me. And we do our thing for a few days. Oh, but before we go on this, like she says it's okay. He books it like 2 or 3 weeks out. The day before, she calls me and says, I don't think this is a good idea for you guys to be in a relationship. I'm going to have to cut it off, but I'm okay with you still having your weekend. And I was like, okay. And I was like kind of mad because I'm like, okay, why didn't you decide this before?
When you guys started sleeping together, did it affect your friendship at all with her, or it stayed pretty much the same?
It kind of like stayed the same. And I feel like we didn't really have much of one because there was such a long period of time while I was in the military that like she kind of didn't want anything to do with me.
Right. Did she ever ask you anything about your relationship with him? Or it was pretty separate?
It was pretty separate, I think, because they talked so much about it. And like I wasn't living there at the time. So there was like a time span of like, let's say 9 months that I was in Boston while this was happening. But it was only for like 2 months after I had come home that time and we slept together. And she was like, you can have a relationship. That he booked that hotel, was coming up to visit me, and she called me the day before and was like, I don't think this is a good idea. You were my student. Like, I don't think this is appropriate. And I'm like, well, no shit, none of it was, but we've already gone so like now you're worried about it. So then he comes up, we have that weekend together. I'm like really sad at the end because we apparently can't do this anymore. Well, I decide that I'm going to move home. So I move home. We're just friends at this point. I'm going over and hanging out, but like nothing's going on with Scott and I, but there's like tension there. And like sometimes Tony would be there, her boyfriend, he would come and visit. And, I remember feeling so much one evening, and we smoked a lot of weed by this point. And I was just like, I had all these feelings and I just like wanted to be loved, and I'm like, it's right here. And like, it was fine before and now it's not. And like, part of me doesn't want this, but part of me does. And he left. I spent the night. So they had a pool. They had a cabana. We would frequently sit under the cabana, smoke weed, talk, drink, whatever. And I thought it was so fun and so cool. By this point, I'm 24. Yeah, 24. And we always had music playing. And do you know who Chris Stapleton is? Mm-hmm. Okay. The first time I ever heard his voice was in a song at their house when he was still a part of the Steel Drivers, which is a bluegrass band. That's who he was before he went solo. And they put this song on, and Tammy was like, you're going to love this song. Like, I know you're a deep feeler, whatever. And it's just me, Tammy, and Scott. Tony wasn't there at this point. And the song came on. Again, I'm like a little bit high, a little bit tipsy, nothing crazy. And the song, like his voice and just the song, and I was already feeling so much. I don't know what it did to my nervous system, but my whole body got like tingly, and then I was like starting to black out. And I remember Scott saying, are you okay? And I was like, no. And then I woke up and she's throwing water in my face. I had fainted, like right out by their pool. And she's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Do I have to call 911? And I was like, no, I like just faint. And he's there like, you're safe, you're fine, you're with people who love you. And he kept repeating the same thing. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And then he's like, were you okay? Like, did you feel sick? And I was like, no, I just felt a lot of things. And then the next day I texted him and said, thank you for like, you know, taking care of me when I fainted. And he's like, what was that? And I was like, I just have a lot inside that I like can't say. And he's like, you know that you can like tell us anything. Like, we love you. And I'm like, I can't say these things in front of your wife that I feel. And he's like, well, what are they? I'm like, why are you playing dumb? Like, you know what like this is. And he's like, let me talk to Tammy. And so then later Tammy's like, hey, it's okay. Like, you guys can have your relationship. Like, I don't want to keep you from each other if you really have like feelings for each other. And I was like, okay, so is it this serious this time? So then we do it. That's like official. Okay, so we go into this relationship. It starts out with like, it's like really hard to even explain. There were like rules that were set, and like, you know, at first we like talked on the phone a little bit, Scott and I, and then it was like, she would tell me like, hey, he's not like really big into phone talking, like, and I want you guys to like have your relationship, but I don't want it to be like that.
So she still had a lot of control in dictating
she's like the ringleader in all of this. She calls the shots. So she's like, wants us to have our relationship, but like wants it to be her way, like not super close, not talking a ton on the phone. He's not a phone talker. He was also like kind of weak in that way, where like he really didn't like use his voice in the way that he should. Probably because he's like under her thumb. But I remember like we just like stopped talking on the phone. It just went to texting. So we like basically had, like, we were together. I was considering him my boyfriend. But like our communication was via text or in person when we would spend time together. And it was kind of like, I would say throughout the 4 years of that time period, he would come down to my apartment like once a week, probably, sometimes once every other week, depending on schedules. And I would go there for like weekends, certain points throughout like, you know, the month or whatever. Just kind of like, there was no set schedule, but it just kind of went how it went. And he would come down and like take me out to dinner. And I would say that our relationship was always, the foundation of it was sexual. That's how it started. Yeah. And they were very obviously sexual people. Did a lot of like, I guess, sex with their friends and poly and whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I felt like I like convinced myself, I think, that I was like more sexual than I actually was. I was like being like hypersexual because I felt like that's what he wanted. Very sexual people. I felt like I had to like really hypersexualize myself. He had like a fetish with like buying dildos for like her and me. And he would just like buy these like massive like 14-inch dildo. And I was like, I'm never going to use that. Like, you can waste your money and buy them, but like, I'm not going to use it. Like, he bought me like a Kong toy, like a dog toy one time, and like wanted me to use it. And like, there was just like all of these things he wanted to try, like all of these things. And it was like, it was just always so sexual. And I remember getting to a point in the relationship where I was just like, I felt like I was like making myself, like there was a point where I enjoyed it in the beginning, like having sex, of course. But then at a certain point, I'm like, I have to perform. Yeah. Like I have to do this. And I just didn't really want to anymore. And our relationship, like there was no depth to it. I just remember just constantly talking and like talking about my life and my friends because we didn't have anything else to talk about. This is like a grown man with like a big boy job, a whole ass wife and kids. They're doing their crazy thing. And I don't know, we weren't connected in that way. He wasn't my person. He wasn't supposed to be, I feel like we weren't supposed to be in a relationship with each other, but we were just like doing this weird thing. And there were like new rules all the time from her. Like it would be okay to do one thing, but not the other. And then she would like switch it the next week. And then she was just increasingly like getting meaner. Is meaner the word? More mean? Whatever. To me, as time went on, I remember there were a couple of times where she like tried to stop the relationship. And so at one point I remember sitting in their basement, it's just me and her. And she's like, what do you want out of this? Like, you're so young. Like, don't you want to find someone? And I was like, yeah, I do. I mean, I'm hoping like I can figure that out, like find someone and keep this. I don't even know what I was doing. I was just happy to be receiving whatever attention and love was available to me. And she was very jealous of me. And she would, tell me that like, you're skinnier than me, you're prettier than me. But then she would say stuff to me like, he really likes like thicker women, right? And it was when I had just lost weight and I was like really thin. I was so anxious when I was with them. I remember like pulling over on the side of 83 or pulling over on the side of the highway and like throwing up, like after leaving their house, like just so anxious and nervous. And I remember having thoughts of like, oh my God, how will I find anyone if I'm stuck with these people? I'm not really polyamorous. I'm just doing this to do it. She would just say little things to me like, he really likes it. Like when a girl is thicker, he like likes longer hair. I had like shaved my head at one point. I don't know. I just like got wild, shaved my head in 2015. And, just little things, like any way to like kind of pull me down. Lots of bickering, fighting, arguing. It's like, I wish I could tell everything because she's so insane. I feel like I'm not doing it justice, but whatever. I felt like very alone. Like I just felt like I felt used, and I knew that, but like wouldn't let myself know it. Like I convinced myself like these people really love me. They really care about me. And I think to an extent that was there. I don't know about her. I genuinely think she's, I don't know if you'd call it a classic narcissist or just fucking crazy, something deeply disturbed, truly. Mm-hmm. I mean, she had a rough upbringing and all of those kinds of things as well. And she would tell me like, you know, I only keep you around for the blowjobs, because she hated giving them. And I was apparently willing to do that. And that was like the joke. Like, you know, I keep you around because you're willing to get blowjobs and I don't do that. And so I would be like, okay, those comments kind of don't make me feel good. And just a lot of sexual jokes. And then I remember her being like, now your sister probably really thinks you're in a sex cult. I'm like, well, my sister doesn't know. Like I wasn't telling anyone either. So like my very close friends knew that this was going on, but like nobody else did. Okay. So like, it's not like my family knew. Now back to the affair part, when that ended and I had to move out and I moved up with my best friend, I did end up telling my sister and my aunt. They were like my closest people. Yeah. Other than my friends, and I just felt like I needed to tell them. And I remember, I forgot a big part here. People are gonna be like, you're all over the place. One of my other best friends, M, she was also close to this other girl that we played field hockey with. And they were like, you know how you like have a best friend, but they also have another one, you're not really close with them. So she was friends with this other friend. We all played field hockey together. This other girl got close with another special education teacher who was on the learning support side of things, who worked very closely with Tammy. I'm going to call her Coach K because that's what we called her. Not close in the way that Tammy and I were, but like they had a good like mentorship, I think, relationship, this girl and Coach K. When I had the affair and I moved out, I had told M, who's my other best friend. I have Kate and M. I remember telling her about this, and M had told this other girl what happened. I think they were like up at college and they were drinking, and it like kind of came out. I don't hold that against M at all. But this other girl, in her very smart mind, thought this is weird and inappropriate. So she tells Coach K. Mm-hmm. I think Brooke like is in a weird thing with this other teacher, with Tammy. After the affair, I still worked at the daycare for a while. And I remember getting a text from Tammy. It felt like my world was crumbling 2.0, where she texted me and said, you told people, and it got back to Coach K. And Coach K went to Tammy's classroom and said, did Brooke sleep with your husband? Which, why would you ask it? Like, as another teacher, I would have been like, what's going on here? And Tammy was like, I'm like, what did you say to her when she asked? She's like, I just begged her not to tell anyone else. And because of that, a couple weeks later, I had already obviously been graduated and moved out of their house by this point. Tammy had texted me and asked me, would I go to prom with one of the special education students in her learning support, whatever. Very like bullied kid. I think she was trying to like embarrass me by having me go to prom with him, but I was all about it. Mm-hmm. I was like, cool, I'm graduated and I get to go back to prom. That's fun. I get to make this kid feel good. He has a date. That's fun. But she was like, to make it up to me, I want you to go to prom with him. And I'm like, okay. So I did that. That was just like another little tidbit weird thing. But anyway, that other girl had found out from M, had told another teacher. That teacher was like, hey, what's going on? I had already been graduated, but it's still the thing. I think this other teacher was like, you're still a teacher in the school system and this just happened last year. Like, what is going on? I'm sure Tammy lied up and down and all the way around about it. So, okay, sorry, that was a whole jump back. But So M had encouraged me at that point to maybe confide in my aunt and my sister, which is why I told them. So they have this knowledge going forward. So I never told my sister that I was like in a relationship with these people, because she would have died after telling her what had happened, years prior. This relationship goes on. We're taking trips. Me, Tammy, Tony, and Scott. We would go stay in like cabins in Virginia, and we'd go for like 2 or 3 nights. And, like we're in the hot tub smoking weed. And like, I remember one time Tammy and Tony are like literally like having sex. And like that had never happened. None of us had like had sex in the same room or anything. And I was like, okay. And she like moved closer to me, and her like wet back rubbed up against mine. And I just remember being like, oh my God, like this has gone like too, what the hell? So I'm like, okay, I guess I'm supposed to like have sex with Scott too. So I remember doing that. And something that's like sort of making me laugh is it got to a point where I was like, I don't think I was like necessarily attracted to him in that way anymore, or maybe ever, but like I got confused on maybe what attraction was as a young person. But I was like faking orgasms. Yeah. And I remember telling him about it. Mm-hmm. And then doing it again and like telling him again like months later. And he's like, the first time I said like, okay, fine, like let's work on it. But like, why do you keep doing it? And I'm such a person who like, I just tell myself for everything. So I just remember being like, why are you like, I think it was like maybe to like kind of get him in his pride a little bit. I don't know why, maybe because of what was happening. But I just remember like just having a lot of sex I didn't want to have. And then there was a point where they went without me down to Tony's house, and they went to like a beer or wine festival. And I remember Scott texting me and saying, and I knew she was like drunk at this point, and so was he, but he said, Tammy just told me here at the festival that she wants to be more sexual with you. And I was like, he's like, how do you feel about that? And I was like, it's not the idea of like a woman that turns me off at all. It's just that it's her. Mm-hmm. It's like, this is like a mother figure, sister, like all the lines are like blurred here. And I'm like, I don't know if I really want to cross that line. I was like, I don't know. Like, I'd have to think about it. And he was like, don't say anything. Like, she'll kill me if she knows I told you. So there was that. And I felt like that was towards maybe like the ending of this, maybe a year out. Mm-hmm. So she also has epilepsy, and she would use that as her excuse as to why she was always so like irritable or angry. I think it was just an excuse, but she was dealing with a lot of like brain stuff at a certain point, and decided to take a sabbatical, like a year leave from working. She was still working as the same type of teacher at this point. And this was so we were like together from 2015 to 2019. And I think she was feeling, maybe unconsciously, this starting to like unravel or see like this is inappropriate. And so she takes a sabbatical under the guise of like needing some medical leave. And then the next year decides to like medically retire early, and just like kind of out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. So she just like retires early, gets like her retirement money or whatever. And she just like stays home, smokes weed all day. Scott works from home. There's a lot more in here. I wish I had like written it down, like I wrote everything else down at like the different time periods. But just like different arguments that we had. I remember, and again, this is all like kind of towards the end. I would say in the last year, there was a lot more arguing between her and I. And I was sitting outside, me, her, and her oldest daughter. Her oldest daughter was probably like 14 at this point. And her oldest daughter says, what was it like being in the Navy? And I like start talking, and the way she's asking, I'm like, okay, is she like interested in this? I'm like, why? Are you thinking about joining the Navy? Like kind of in a joking way. And Tammy was like, she's not joining the fucking military. We don't do that here. And I was like, she's like, I mean, she can go like ROTC. They were very, I forgot to say this part, like very about like education. And Tammy thought she was hot chick. She was like so educated and had like multiple degrees. It was like the only asset I feel like she had, truly. And that was like her identity. And so they were like, you know, one kid's going to be a lawyer and the other is going to be, you know, whatever. And Tammy comes from nothing. And so she's going to make sure that her kids are like the best and super educated and whatever. And she got like really snippy. And I was like, what's wrong with the military? And she was like, only people who like have nothing else like going for them have to go into the, and I was like, I did that.
Yeah.
So I was just like, oh my God, you think I'm like
you think that of me.
Right. You think I'm like, what? Like nothing, you know, like, and I just remember being so offended. Also, I signed my life away on a dotted line that I would fucking die for this country. Like, it's not like a little thing, you know what I mean? But she was trying to say like basically like delinquents only enlist in the military if you have nothing else going for you and you're not smart enough, which there was a lot of that. It was a lot. There was many comments made. Like she would even say them to their kids so much that the kids would start to joke about it. Like, because we know Brooke doesn't know blah, blah, blah. Like under the guise of like joking that I didn't know math or like didn't know other things. Like it was always this like undertone of like Brooke is dumb is how I felt. And that's how she wanted me to feel. I know that. And so she says that. And I just remember saying, what about what your daughter wants? And she was like, we're the ones paying for, and it just, I was just like, what the hell? And I remember her daughter being like, this is, and I remember it feeling like my head was gonna like pop off my shoulders. I just was like, you're fucking out of line here. And I just went inside the house, and then same thing. She texted me, I'm really sorry. It was not appropriate. Like, I'm really sorry I hurt your feelings. Please come back out here. And I was like, no, I really want to go home. And she was like, just come back out here. So I come back out, and then there's always like a reward too. It's like, do you want to like go out to dinner with me and like we can hang out? Like this, you know what I mean? Like when you do something hurtful to someone and then make up for it, instead of like being honest and like talking about your feelings, you're just like, how can I patch this over? And because she knew how much I loved her and wanted to spend time with her, she would just be like, do you want to go do this fun thing? And I'm like, oh, conveniently after you just like totally insulted my whole life. There was a lot of stuff like that. And I remember one time Scott and I were having sex in the basement, and the rule was that like you had to lock the top lock of the basement door and like obviously shut it so nobody could come down. This is like 2 p.m. on like a Saturday. They have teenagers who are home upstairs and we're just having sex in the basement. I remember being like, this is probably not a good idea. And you know, like who's coming down the stairs by the way their feet hit the ground. Like you just start to recognize those things, and we knew it was their oldest. And but I'm under the assumption that the door is locked. The door opens and I just like pull the covers up to my neck. He's standing there without a shirt, like throws on his pants, standing like an idiot. He never doesn't have a shirt on, and she comes down the stairs, and it's obvious what we're doing. She's also 14, so she knows what this is. And she's like, she also knows that we are in a relationship. She knows that her parents are polyamorous. I remember one time sitting under the cabana and we're all like arms around each other, like the four of us. And she comes out and was like, you guys are weird. And Tammy was like, you can choose to do whatever you want as an adult, but this is what we choose to do. And it's not weird. It's all about love or whatever. And their oldest says, that's okay. That's what I'm in therapy for. Don't worry. And I just remember being like, oh man. And then when she came downstairs and it was obvious what we were doing, I was like, I remember that being a point where I was like, I hate this. Like, this feels not good. Cause she was just like, does anyone know where mom is? And he's like, oh, did you check upstairs? And she's like, I'll go right now. And like just walked upstairs. And I'm like, you didn't lock the fucking door? And he's like, I locked it. I think I just like didn't pull it shut all the way. And it's so crazy. I felt for their oldest, like I felt bad about obviously the kid thing, but I was like, we're going to be in so much trouble. Like Tammy's going to flip out. And she was like, well, did you learn your lesson? I guess you'll remember to lock the door and shut it all the way, won't you? And I was just like, oh, okay, all right. And I know he got shit for that later on. Just lots of this, lots of inappropriate things I feel like happening in this home with these kids, and they're just like doing like everyone's smoking weed hardcore, and which doesn't sound like a big deal, but like the way they smoked it was just like all day, every day. Like we're out in the pool house. They think they're hiding it from their kids, but the kids, I'm sure, know they're teenagers. And one day, I just remembered this. Tammy and I would like sometimes follow her around while she would clean, and she would just want me to like talk to her. And I just loved that. And so I sat in her youngest's bed while she cleaned her room for her while she was at school. And we came upon a journal. And at this point, their youngest was, I think, 12. And I see the blood just like drain out of Tammy's face. And I'm like, is everything okay? She's like, no. And I'm like, what is it? Like, what'd you find? And she like didn't want to tell me. And I know it's because she knows that it's really her doing that like caused all this shit. But I remember she told me a little bit that like the youngest was writing about like wanting to harm herself or maybe even kill herself in this, or wanting to die or something. And I remember feeling like that's a big deal. Like you have to like sit down, you gotta like let your kids know you're there, that kind of thing. And I remember the next day being like, did you have a conversation with so-and-so, like how'd it go? And she's like, yeah, it's all fine. Like she just said like it was like a bad day or whatever. And I just remember it being like, so nonchalant. Like, I was just like, really? That's it? Like, that's all you're going to do for her? And there was just so much lack of them. Like, even the kids were just, it's like they just did their own thing in the house. They were always up in their rooms, on their phones, like not really engaged in anything. And yeah, so it was just a lot of trips, a lot of sex that I didn't want to have. And then Tammy says to me, I think you and Tony should have a relationship. And I'm like, okay. She's like, you're the two secondary partners, and like he lives far away, you don't live with us, and like we just think it would be good for you guys to like have each other to like kind of talk to. And I'm like, okay. Not really interested, but at this point she and I had been arguing so much, she was starting to be very mean to me, that I was like, I'm just gonna do it just out of spite. So I realized I was starting to do things to like bother her or make her jealous. So I started a relationship with him, and then it was like she was upset that he was talking to me too long on FaceTime. And oh God, like it would just like, she just controlled everyone and everything. It was her way or the highway. I remember her being like, we're going to go down to Tennessee. Do you want to come with us? You and Tony can have sex if you want. Like, if that's where you want to take your relationship to. I'm like, okay. So her and Scott leave for the day. Tony and I have sex. I'm like, I literally didn't want to. I just did it because I knew it would really ruffle her feathers. And it absolutely did. Just like so much jealousy, arguing, whatever. And then this is just getting increasingly worse. More arguing, just like her constantly picking at me, just starting arguments with me. And very jealous. She would say things like, you cost us a lot of money. And she had said this to me even when I lived with her. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, Scott, like taking you on dates and stuff. And I'm like, okay, what would you, should I feel bad about it? So she kept saying that so much that I was feeling things unraveling, and like this was going south. And I'm like, how can I like make this up to her? So I say to her, because I feel like we're hanging by a thread, I'm like, why don't you and I go on a trip we went to Asheville, North Carolina for a few nights, and I'll pay for like the room and gas or whatever. And she's like, okay, yeah, let's do that. And I just remember being like, this is so not a good idea. I was just trying to like hang on. And I remember telling Scott like the night before we left, him and I were smoking, and I was just like, I have a bad feeling about this. He's like, it's going to be okay. You guys are going to be fine. Now he was always like my safe space. So when she was flipping out or whatever, I would go to him and be like, she's being so mean. And he would like comfort me, and he'd be like, she loves you so much. Like I know like she has like a hard time. Like she really does love you so much. Like she's not trying to hurt you. So it was like always like this, like, what is that called? Like affirming or whatever. So I felt like it like kept me because then I'm like, well, he's right. Like I do believe that she like loves me or whatever. So I say that to him the night before. He's like, it's going to be fine. It was everything with him was like, it's going to be fine. Like you're going to have a great time. Just go down there. Just like enjoy yourselves. It's going to be okay. I'm like, okay. So we go down there. I get this like little tiny house that has like a little loft. And we go in and the like, you know, those like tiny house have those like weird outhouse toilets, compost toilets. And so it's like broken and I don't even know. She just complained the whole time. Now, whenever we went somewhere, like stayed in different like cabins or on our trips or whatever, they would usually pay. Sometimes I would give my part, but a lot of times Scott would just be like, don't worry about it. Also, he made plenty of money. And that's what she would refer to, like, you cost us so much money, or like, we always do so much for you kind of thing. And I'm like, this is just what happens when you're in a relationship, but you're also putting me in this and then telling me that like, I cost you, like I just always felt so bad. I always felt like such a burden. So she's complaining the whole weekend about this house. And I'm like, I sat for hours on Airbnb looking at reviews, finding the best house. Like I always wanted to make sure that what I did impressed her. It was the best, whatever. So to hear her complain the whole time, I was just like, this is hurtful and it's rude because I just paid all this fucking money. And it's the morning we're leaving, and she had just been so irritable with me the day before and that morning. Everything I did, like when I tell you I did not do anything to her, she was literally just finding ways to like pick at me. Like, why are you putting that there? Or like, why do you look like that? Or like, just like random stuff. And I just remember turning around and being like, are you okay? Like, what is going on? And she's like, you're just really fucking annoying. And I was like, I literally haven't even done anything. And I just remember feeling like, I can't stand this person. And it started to feel like in that last year, in particular, the last 6 months, I felt very annoyed by her, which was such a change of pace. If you would have asked me 15 years ago if I would have ever been annoyed with this person in my life, I would have said she'd be the last person to ever get on my nerves. And she's also one of those people who always has to be right. She knows everything. She's just like a big know-it-all, very loud, always needing attention and always wanting to look hot. And like, I remember that whole weekend, she just kept taking selfies. Like she probably had like 100 of them in her phone and like wanting me to get it. And I'm like, I don't want to take this many pictures. And then she's like, take a picture of me. I'm going to send it to Scott and Tony and tell them that I want them to tell me I'm pretty. She would always say to Tony, like, tell me I'm pretty. Like, just like weird. And so, yeah, I just say like, what's wrong with you? And she tells me I'm fucking annoying. And I was just like, you've been so mean to me all morning. I don't even understand like what's going on. And she's like, just get your shit and let's get the fuck out of here. And I'm like, okay. She also sucks at driving. So we had her car, but I drove. And she gets in the driver's seat knowing that it would annoy me because I hate the way she drives. She's a dangerous driver. And we leave. We're heading back home. We have like a 7-hour drive together, maybe 8. And we had decided we were going to go to Biscuit Head, this place that has biscuits in Asheville, for breakfast. At this point, my appetite is gone because she's been like mean and whatever. And we're driving and it's like silent, and we get to Biscuit Head and we walk in and I decide I'm done with this. Like, I'm going to get a coffee and we're going to get on the road. I'm like, I'll just take a coffee to go. And she's like, a coffee to go, and making a scene in this place, by the way. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just getting something to go. And she's like, I thought we were fucking eating here. And I was like, would you like to? Like, we can sit down. That's fine. She's like, no, if you're not going to fucking eat. And the woman is standing there, like the hostess. And I was like, I'll just take a coffee to go. And like, Tammy walks outside. I know she's going to call Tony and complain. And because she wouldn't call Scott because he would be like, why are you being like this? And so I walk out to the car and we get in the car and we start driving. And she's like, do you need to pee? And I'm like, no, I'm good. And she's like, this is the last stop I'll be making. And this is the last exit. Like, do you need to pee? And I'm like, I'm an adult. I'm not 12. I just told you I don't need to pee. I'm okay. You can keep driving. Somehow we get gas, we switch, we start driving, and it's silent. And she says, okay, when she said I was annoying, she said, you're the most annoying person I know. That's what it was. Because her apology was, okay, so maybe you're not the most annoying person I know. Maybe actually it's probably Michelle, like her other friend. Like that was supposed to be my apology and make me feel better. And I was like, maybe you should wait and like come back with an apology when you've like thought it through, because that's not making me feel any better. And so we like keep going, and she said something, and I just said, you told me I was the most annoying person that you've ever met. And then she just went off and was just like, you're too much. And I honestly can't even remember. Just telling me like mean things about myself. And I just remember looking out the window. And at this point, it had gotten to, like, so I felt like I lost all of my 20s. So I was 28 at this point. To just let this person, and she had treated me like this. We don't have enough time for me to go through all of the ways in which she treated me and all of the things she said to me and all the names that she called me. But I'm like looking out the window, and I just remember thinking, I would love to just open this door and just fall out. Like and just like get run over. Like I don't want to do this anymore, but I don't know a way out, you know, like I don't know how to like leave these people that I love so much, that apparently love me so much, but I know I'm done with this person. Like I'm done with the way that she's treating me. And we're like screaming at each other. I just remember like throwing my phone on the floor of the car, and I was like, I can't wait to get out of this fucking car with you. Like I can't stand you. She's like, good. I've never been able to stand you. And I'm like, wow, okay. So we get back. We're silent, by the way. At some point she says to me, like, I'm really sorry. Like, I love you and I'm really sorry. And I was like, honestly, I just can't talk right now. Like, just, it's fine. Like, I just want to drive home. And I was driving at this point. So we pull into the driveway, and Scott comes out to like help us with our stuff. And normally with something like that, coming back from a trip, I would like spend the night and like spend time with him. So we get back to the house. He comes out. Normally I would spend the night. But he takes one look and he just knows, as I just looked at him like, kind of like, I told you that this is going to happen. And he just knows. Like, we get out of the car and he's like, they fought. And she just quietly walks inside, and he's like, are you going to stay? And I'm like, no, I really just want to go home. He's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, it did not go well. He's like, I can tell. I'm like, yep. So I go home. So I have my own apartment at this point, and I'm you know, go on living my life. That was August of 2019. And we kept on our same thing. I remember also in this time frame, probably like a year before the ending, they had found out about this club called Taboo. And it's a sex club. And so we all went. And I remember Tammy being like, let's go to the basement and see if we can see anybody like having sex. Because there's like all these rooms where people can have sex. It's just like a nightclub upstairs, like a normal nightclub. Yeah. But people were doing things. And I just remember being like, what am I doing here? Like, this is not my scene. So stuff like that. Like always like the sex, but I forgot to say that part. Anyways, so we go on living our lives. I think we had like, Tony had come into town. We went to like a jazz club one night. I remember laughing with Tammy. And that same night, they came to my apartment first to pick me up and like come in for a few minutes. And I had incense lit on my coffee table, and we were leaving. And it's incense. And there was like literally like that much left, you know, still smoking. But incense, you know how it goes. It just burns out. We go to walk out. Now, this is classic her, like just little nitpicks about stupid shit. And she was like, you're going to leave that lit? And I was like, it's not a candle. It's literally about to burn out in 10 seconds. And she's like, that's stupid. Like what? Like, it's a fire hazard. And even Scott was like, it's not that big of a deal. It's just like incense. And I, at that point, was so ready for her to say anything to me, because I'm just like ready to bite her head off. And she kept pushing. And I said, it's my fucking apartment. It's fine. Like, just get your shit and let's go. So we leave. we also all went to a Chris Stapleton concert around that time together, and got in like this huge argument. I got drunk, and like, I just remember drinking beers, like, just to like get myself to be able to be around her, because I just knew I was ready to get picked at all night. So, you know, I had started to think about what the ending of this might look like for me. And it's like one of those things, and I've never also been in a serious relationship outside of this, even still. Which is like a pain point for me. But I had started feeling so done with this and done with her, and just so like just irritated with her all of the time, and couldn't stand being around her, and really lost any attraction, if that's even what you could call it, with him, and just was like, I do not want to do any of this anymore. And I remember like running through it in my head of how it would look to end this. And I have to say this because it's a part I forgot, but my now former therapist, sadly, she shut down her practice like 3 months ago, which was very sad. Somewhere along the way, so like I go to her initially to be like, I need someone who's like okay with polyamory, even though what I was doing was totally like not even what I wanted and not okay. And I think there were holes in it along the way where she was like, okay, like this is turning from, you came to me in a polyamorous relationship, but now we've spent 3 years talking about this, and whoa, like this is actually weird. And it got to this point. Okay, so I end this relationship with them, but before so I'm like, for like 6 months probably like grieving this. I remember being in my car and like playing the scenario out in my head of what I would say and how to end this. And I would cry and like really imagine it. And it was so painful. And I did that so much that I think when I finally did, I
already experienced it.
Yes. Like it wasn't as devastating as I imagined it would be. And I think I just felt so free. But the last straw was like that argument with her in Asheville that was so much more than what I was even able to speak about on here. And just little things after that. It was like constant arguing. And also after that big argument in Asheville, her like reward thing that she always does was the next day, she's like, do you want to do a competition of like how little waste we can use? Like she was all into like eco-friendly. She's like, even when you go get a coffee, she's like, you know what? I want to buy you like a really cute cup, like reusable cup that you can use at like Starbucks or like any of these places you get coffees to reduce your waste. Let's see who can like reduce waste. It was like I just remember being like, oh, this is weird, but okay. She sends me which cup, this one or this one. And I picked the one that I liked the most. You know, she got me the other one in the mail. I remember getting it from Amazon and being like, that's literally not the cup that I chose, but okay. So it was like that. And that was like it, and then she was like, did you reduce your waste this week? Like she was like trying to like get in with me on such a weird topic. I'm like, that's not a way, take me to dinner, you know, like do something better. So yeah, I had run through this in my head so much. I hadn't seen my therapist at this point. I think it had been like 8 months or something. So she didn't know that I was like thinking of ending this, and I hadn't talked to her about it or anything. And I knew that telling my sister would be it. Like once I told her, I knew I wouldn't be able to like go back into it. So my sister and I are going to celebrate my mom's anniversary, her clean date or whatever. And she got in my car and I just said, I have a bomb to drop on you. And she was like, what? Like that's how I always tell my sister something. And so I tell her, like, I've been in a relationship with Tammy and Scott, polyamorous for like all these years or whatever. And she was just like silent. And I was like, I knew if I told you like I'm ready to be done and I don't know another way to like get out of this other than to tell you. So then I have to get out of it. And so it was like days of like sitting on, like, I'm like, I know I have to do it, but like, it's such an uncomfortable thing to do, to like break up with anybody, much less end this whole part of my life. And so I finally, I get the courage, and I knew he sensed that I was being like weird in our texting, and I sent him a text midday. I knew it was while he was like doing work. I was like, I don't care. I'm ready to say it. So I just said, hey, is there any way you can meet me at some point this evening? I need to talk. Like, I can't do this anymore. And he was like, oh my God. Okay. Yeah. Let me like make sure we have rides for the girls to like sports or whatever. And yeah, I'll make the time. Like, okay. So he, meets me at like this like hiking spot. We didn't go hiking. We just sat in his truck and talked, and I just started crying and was just like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I can't be treated like this anymore. She has been, you know, so not good to me. And he was like, I know, you're right. And I was like, just like, you know, like ending it. And he was just, I knew he was mad at her and like sad, whatever. And we just sat in his truck. And I just remember being like, how do I leave? Like, how do I get out of this car right now? And he was like, I think you just like open the door and go. Like, go be free. I think that's what he said. And I was like, okay. And I kissed him a few times and I got in the car. If I did not get, so they live like an hour from me, and he would have made it home in a half an hour, but it would have still taken me longer. Or no, it took him longer to get home because we were right near my house, something like that. And it wasn't 5 minutes after he probably got home. I was like, less than an hour after doing this, she's calling me, which I didn't expect right away for some reason. And I was like, hi, what's up? And she's like, can we please talk? Like, are you sure? Like, this is what you want to do? Like, you've hurt him so much. Like, it was such a ploy to like keep me. And I was like, I was like, I can't. And she's like, and you blamed it all on me. Then it switches like when she realizes that I'm like, no, I do want to do this. Then it's like, we've given you everything. You've taken everything that's mine and made it yours. You've done all of this. You're the one who had like the affair. Just like this whole thing, like you're the problem in all of this. You're the one always causing arguments, just like crazy shit. And you blame it all on me. You're done with him. So, you're going to blame it all on me. Like, just like totally gaslighting me. And I was like, listen, I cannot talk to you right now. Like, I just made one of the biggest decisions of my life and I've had 45 minutes to process it. Like, I'm not trying to go into this other realm with you and like have this conversation. Which I think this is the problem with non-monogamy and multiple partners. It's like, there's so many feelings and so many people that have to talk. Not that this was anything real as far as like a real, what people consider real polyamory or non-monogamy or whatever. But to me, it was when I was in it. And so, then she texts me later. I like wish I still had these texts, but I don't. At a certain point, I finally deleted them, like begging, and was like, we are sisters, united by like all these like weird things. We are warriors who get knocked down, but get back up just to fight the same demons we battle with again and again. Like some like weird poetic shit. And I knew it was just, she was floundering. Now she had just in those that last year done the medical retiring. I think because she felt this coming. Yeah. Like the ending of all of this and blowing up in her face. And like, I need you, Brooke. I need you. You have emotionally and spiritually surpassed me in all of the ways. Like, you're so smart. I've been so jealous of you because you're prettier and skinnier. And like, I love you so much. Like, please don't do this. I need you. Like, we need you in our lives. And I was just like, I finally just said like, hey, go take care of yourself, go heal. Sorry, another big part that I had like forgotten about was right up when I decided to end it was because I was on Instagram one night and I came across, I don't know if you've ever seen her, the holistic psychologist on Instagram. She has like all these followers now. She was a therapist and then decided to like put some content out there. She did a lot of research on like trauma and the brain, whatever. And I just remember finding her page. Something resonated with me. And I sat all night and like read every single one of her posts and like the captions underneath and even people's comments. I was up all night reading this and I like woke up to myself and like the world. And I was like, oh, I now know why we are the way we are. It was like my awakening into like what healing looks like, and looking at our conditioning and like how we were raised and how all of those things play a part in who we are and how we are. And I remember being like, I'm not going to be able to unsee any of this. And I just knew that was going to be the unraveling of this. And so it was like started to become very clear. The more I learned this terminology and the things that were happening, I'm like, that's what she's done to me, or that's what they've done, or like that's what this has been, or a trauma bond, or like whatever any of this was. And it really only took like a month before I was like, oh yeah, like I'm done.
Cut ties.
So where was I? I tell her, I say, go follow this person, the holistic psychologist, or go seek some therapy and get some help. I do love you too, but like you need help, and like I'm done with this. There's no amount of sorry, because she was like, I'm sorry. I know I've been like a horrible friend to you. Like it's been even deeper than that. And I said, please do not contact me ever again. And she never did, because I think she got it. Him and I ended up having a FaceTime conversation a couple months after this to like talk through it, because I remember him texting me probably like a month after I ended it in the middle of the night. I knew he was with his best friend Kevin. I knew he was drunk, and he sent me a text that said, I miss the fuck out of you. And I just remember being like, I can't even get just like a regular I miss you. I'm like, I'm sure you missed the fuck out of me, literally, you know, like that's how I felt. And I just remember being like, what? And like, I still communicated with him. And we had like a FaceTime conversation just to talk through. He's like, look, I want to be friends with you, but like we can't if you have so much anger towards Tammy. And I'm like, I don't really care, you know, either way. Like, but I still wanted to be a part of their life at this point. And I remember he was on the FaceTime with me in their pool house. And of course, she comes in conveniently to hit the bowl right behind his head. I knew she was doing it so that I would see her. And I just was silent. I didn't say anything. And she walked out. And then I just remember him being like, we can't, like, I literally can't be friends with you if you hate my wife. And I'm like, okay. And it's like, we would contact each other like every couple of months, like, how are you kind of thing. And it kind of like dwindled down. So I'm like in therapy, right, at this point, and my therapist says to me one day, I'm processing through all of this, the ending of this, and I come in one day and she's like, so before we get into our session, like, I need to tell you this. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, I'm a mandated reporter, and I actually, I need to call CPS on Tammy. You can either do it yourself or I can, but one of us, like, we have to report. I think that's how she said it. Maybe she was the one who had to do it. I don't remember how this was said, but I know it was said. And I just remember being like, please don't do this. Like, please don't do this. Because I was like, the last thing I want is for this to end up. And I'm thinking, like, what do you have to call CPS for? Like, I'm an adult. But because this happened while I was a teenager, and it doesn't matter. You can report anything from years prior. And because this person still holds a license in this state as a teacher, they can, like, it's predatory behavior, essentially, like the way that she was with me, even though it wasn't anything sexual, just the way she had a relationship with me as her student was what the CPS thing was for. And also because she still held that certificate, she could do it again, or it could be even worse or whatever. And I just remember being like, please don't do this. But I knew she had to. And I know that, you know, my therapist cared about me so much and knew how fucked up this was that I knew there was nothing I could say. Like, no amount of begging would make her not do it. Yeah. So she did it. And the next week I was at my sister's watching my nieces, and I got a call from like an agent, an investigator, whatever you want to call it. And he was like, hey, you know, there's grounds for a case here. Like, do you want to file, like, whatever charge? And I was like, no, I do not. Like, I don't want any, I already left these people. Yeah. Like, and at that point, you know, my therapist was like, she could do this to somebody else, but she had already medically retired. And I knew in my silence with her, because I was like, don't ever contact me again. I knew my silence it scared the shit out of her, because I was always crawling back to her, you know, always wanting to be a part of her life. So my silence meant like, oh my gosh. And I knew she was scared. I knew she was really scared, because she did hold a license, because that was her job, because her kids went to the school district just over. And I just said, no, I don't want to, file, charges or whatever. I never heard from them, but Scott had a lot of pictures of me, like whether he took them or I sent them to him or of us. And he had made, before I ended things, he had made a file of these, like a private shared Google file that our pictures were, we could both look at them. And I was like a co-owner of this photo album. And I tried to delete these pictures. This was actually only like last year. And I was with my ex-girlfriend at this time, and she was like, yeah, like I think you should delete them. And I go to delete them and I can't because I'm not the owner. Like I'm the co-owner, but because he created the album, I don't have any rights to that. And I'm like, oh my God, like I have all of these pictures. By the way, he was like such a porn addict too. I don't think he would ever put my shit out there. Like I know that he would not, but and I don't know what kind of mental state she's in or what she would do with my pictures. I'm like, I remember talking to my therapist about this. Like, I want to reach out and say remove the pictures, but I don't want to reach out. Like the thought of even reaching out would make me so anxious. And she was like, like feel it out, do whatever you want to do. And at first I said like, pictures, whatever. And she's like, well, like what's the extent of this? I'm like, hundreds. She's like, okay. I get why maybe you don't want someone to, and I didn't, like I'm in a relationship with somebody, like I don't want somebody else to have these pictures of me. And I know what kind of person he is. So I know he's still looking at these pictures and videos and whatever. And so, I go to text them. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. Now I haven't talked to them since it was probably 2020 that I had talked to him. And this was 2024, like literally exactly a year ago, I think is when I texted them.
So it would have been 4 years of nothing between you guys?
Well, we may have, no, because like in 2021, my prior ex-girlfriend, I had like, somehow him and I were, oh, how are you, whatever. He's like, are you seeing anybody? I'm like, yeah, I have a girlfriend. And so we had talked, probably 2021 was the very last time because he had like texted me something. I said, I don't think that we should text anymore. Like I have a girlfriend and I know that she's like would not be okay with this. So, it would have been 3 years, probably 3.5 since I had talked to them at all. And he, so I decided I'm going to send them a text. And all it said was, hey, it's Brooke. Can you please delete all the pictures that you have saved of me in the shared file? Or all the picture, can you just delete the shared file, essentially, or any pictures of me that you have saved anywhere else? Because remember, he had that picture of me from when I was younger, like saved on his computer. I go to text him and I had the thought, I'm going to text her too, because I just like know her. I know how she is. And I have a lot of anger towards her. I should have more towards him. I'm not sure why I don't, but I have more towards her. And it is what it is. But I decide I'm going to send her the same text, but I'm going to say, can you have Scott delete all of the pictures of me? So I send them both the text and I realize they have me blocked. And I don't know why this hurts my feelings, but I'm like, wow, you guys blocked me. Well, I did have her blocked, but I had to unblock her to send this. But they have me blocked. And I'm like, wow. Well, and I know it's because they're scared. So I think what happened was after my therapist called CPS, somebody let her know. Somebody called, somebody went over there. She was informed of this. I just know it. So my ex-girlfriend was like, just text them from my phone. Like they don't have my number. I don't care. We'll just block them after. So I send them the text. She writes back, consider it done. And I know exactly how she's saying it. And he writes back, okay, will do. And I just blocked them. And the album was completely gone and deleted. And who knows, he could have, I'm sure he has the picture saved of me and whatever. But yeah, so that was like the ending of it. And it's just been a lot of, I did a lot of talking through this and processing with my therapist. And I think the thing I've had the hardest time with is, seeing myself as a victim because I'm like, I made a choice as an adult, and I feel so responsible in that way. But then I also can see this for what it is. And I can, as my 34-year-old self, I can look and be like, can't imagine ever doing something like this with like a young person or anyone. And I don't want to live in victimhood either. Like things happen to us, and I believe, not to sound cliche, but I believe everything makes us who we are. And like we all are on, a journey, and there's lessons in everything. And for some reason that was my journey, and I don't know that I would change it, because it has made me who I am. But I think I've struggled a lot with my sexuality and like knowing what that is. That really confused me. At the very end of this, we would like watch TV, me, her, and Scott. We'd all be like cuddled up kind of together. And after he had sent me that text, like, she wants to be more sexual with you. This was probably like weeks after that. I remember we were sitting there, our legs were dangled over him, and she started like, I call it foot fucking. I don't know if we want to put that in here because it sounds so weird. But she's like, starts rubbing my feet with hers. And the second she touched my foot, it sent like a zing through my whole body where I was like, like I liked it, but it wasn't her. I think it was just like a woman. And that, I just remember being like, I hated it. Like I was like, I hate that I felt that way. But I remember that being like, what the fuck is going on? And then she was like doing it for the rest of like the like next 2 or 3 weeks. She like each time we were all like on the couch, she was like touching my, like rubbing my feet with hers. And I didn't have the same feelings about it in my body moving forward as I did that first time. But I just was like, this is going into weird territory. And I think I knew, whether, consciously or not, that this was going in a weird place. And I think she had said to me over the years, like, did you ever think like maybe you're gay? Like maybe you're a lesbian? And I feel like she could sense me slipping. And so she was trying to hold on to me by like getting like more intimate with me. But she didn't actually feel that for me, kind of thing. So yeah, that was the part that I missed. But I think it confused me a lot in my sexuality. I think it kept me stuck a lot. I think it's made it really hard for me to like be open. And, maybe it's also just part of my process. I know that like one day I will find someone, and I know it all like went exactly how it was supposed to. And I think a lot of it's really unfortunate. I think a lot of what they did and facilitated was pretty, but I think just like, and I'm okay now. Like I've done a lot of processing. Obviously, talking about this brings it up.
Upset. Yeah.
But I feel like it is painful to feel like I thought these people were my family. Like I thought they loved me so much, and I loved them like, so much. And to kind of realize, like when you zoom out and when you look back on something like this, where you're like, that's not love, and like they could have fucking cared less, like. He got to have his little side piece. She was okay with it. And she was okay controlling everything and berating me in the process, like, I think that's so painful. And I'm not somebody who's like easily duped or like very gullible or anything like that. And so I think that's also painful, where I'm like, damn.
Like, how did this happen?
Like,
yeah. But you know how.
Right. And I was a kid. Yeah. Right? Like, this is how shit like this starts.
A kid that was going through a really hard time, and you leaned on people that you thought you could trust, you know? And it unraveled into years of just twisted, toxic shit.
Yeah, it really did. And I will say, like, man, without my therapist, like, I don't know how I would have, like, processed any of this. She
probably helped you really understand different things throughout your story that can allow you to see it from a different perspective. It's not so much of being like victimizing yourself,
right,
as it is just making you realize the truth of what things are and why things aren't okay.
Yes.
Like, while yes, you end up reaching an age where you make decisions as an adult, like prior to that, there was a point where you really didn't know any better, or maybe there was this weird line that maybe your gut said this is weird and off, but like it's a woman and I trust her, and if my parents or if my mom's okay with me going there, I guess it's fine, like
all of those things.
Right. So there's so many different things kind of wrapped up in there. But it's a lot. I think, like we were saying before, revisiting something from start to end it does make a lot of those emotions resurface. I mean, that's what makes us human,
Yeah.
So, but I think you did a great job of telling it. I don't feel like you were all over the place at all.
Okay.
So,
I feel like
there's a lot of detail in it,
Yeah.
and I do think that while it's a lot of detail, it does set the tone of the relationship that you had with them and how bad it got with her.
Yeah.
And how she treated you and that whole dynamic. So I think it was really good background, and I think it was important to include everything that you did.